Thursday afternoon, and welcome to
580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzynski and Dan Lucero here with you for the next 3 hours
on this gray and gloomy Thursday. It's all fun and games here on the program.
We've got a ton to get to today.
Good
guest list for you as well as always on Thursday afternoons. Rick Peterson is going to stop by coming up at the bottom of this hour for the Investor Credit Union High School Whip Around. Second round of the postseason coming up.
Big matchup for both the Hayden Wildcats.
Hayden actually was a bit of a favorable matchup. They're taking a long road trip. They're going down to Southeast Kansas to take on Columbus.
But they
get to take on a 5-5 Columbus team. Hayden obviously on the year 9-1. Washburn Rural, meanwhile, they're heading down to South Central Kansas to take on Derby. Big task for Steve Bueller's group, but they performed as well as any team, at least in 6A, if not any class, with a combined score of 70-7 in their first two postseason games. So we'll talk about both of those matchups, some other key games around the state, and some other news and notes from the prep sports scene coming up here at the bottom of this hour. Leading off the 4 o'clock hour today, Fulton is going to join us about a half an hour earlier than normal for Crosstalk. Lots to get to with Fulton today. You just heard on Mic'd Up, of course. And then coming up, bottom of the 5 o'clock hour,
we will get to Mitch Holthus, our weekly conversation with the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs. He will stop by, brought to you by Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. That is all coming up over the course of the show today here on 580 Sports Talk. We'll also get to our initial look ahead to the matchup between the Chiefs and the Jaguars and whether or not the Jags really do anything that worries you at all. What should the Chiefs be most concerned about with this Jaguars team? We'll look ahead to a big weekend for the Big 12. We'll get some bowl projections in there as well. We've got our 580 Sports Talk headlines. That includes today some big news from the Kansas Board of Education, something that could make a big impact for team mascots in the state of Kansas. 32 different teams, in fact. So that's coming up in our headlines today. We'll have our Thursday Night Football preview and same-game parlays. It's not the greatest Thursday Night Football matchup of all time.
You know who I feel bad for? Al Michaels.
Yeah, nihilist Al is going to come out in full force tonight. I'm a little bummed that I'm not going to get to watch the game with the sound, and I'll be at the KU game tonight against North Dakota State. I might have to throw the headphones in just like middle third quarter, see what Al's saying. Hear what Herbie's weekly, well, maybe this game is actually good comment will be.
Al just going down his Saturday betting card. Kirk, what do you think? KU Texas Tech, over 64.5?
Kirk, you pay attention to a lot of this stuff. Best SEC bet for the weekend. So we'll get to all that coming up today on 580 Sports Talk. We'd love for you to be part of the show, as always, on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. And you can check us out on YouTube as well. Sports on 580 WIBW is the YouTube channel. You can just go to YouTube, type in Sports on 580 WIBW. We will pop up. You can also go to youtube.com/@Sports on 580. That'll bring us to our channel as well. You can watch the live stream of the show going on right now. The comments section is up and running as well. We get all the comments right in front of us. In fact, our pal Vance on the YouTube comments right now says Buffalo or Minnesota for this weekend. Depends on if Josh Allen's going to go. Honestly, though, I kind of think I might go Buffalo even if Josh Allen doesn't play.
Really? I might lean Minnesota because I think they're good enough to win even if Josh Allen plays. For the sake of safety.
Trust Dan on this one because I have an inherent bias against all things Minnesota Vikings. So lean with Dan's pick on this one.
Or don't.
Don't blame him if it's wrong. Right. I'm just saying.
But if you're right, I deserve all the credit. And if you're wrong, I get none of the blame.
All right, let's get into it for today. And again, your thoughts welcome across our various social platforms today as well. Chiefs Jaguars coming up this weekend. It is at Arrowhead Stadium. We goofed that up yesterday. It is at Arrowhead. Noon kickoff. That's just the second noon kick game of the season so far for the Chiefs.
And then they go right back to primetime the week after that.
Of course they do. Look, you can't write off anyone in the NFL. Just last year, the Jags, who were, even though they're bad this year, they were measurably worse last season.
Cartoonishly bad because they had one of the worst head coaches in NFL history running the show for the first, what did Meyer get, 13 games?
13 games. And they beat the Bills 9-6.
They
okay,
sure did.
Things happen. They also had that game in which they knocked the Colts out of the postseason. Very funny. You can't write anybody off, but this team in Jacksonville, outside of that brief period earlier in the season where you thought, hey, they might be kind of fun. They might have something going here. They've been pretty awful. The offense is disjointed. It's unlike last year. There's clearly a vision for it. Like, you can tell what Doug Peterson wants to do. It's just a matter of they don't have enough guys to really do it. Their offensive line's not very good. We'll get to Trevor Lawrence specifically in just a moment. He's been a little up and a lot of down this year. Their wide receivers are okay. Christian Kirk got that huge contract. He's actually played pretty well this year. They just, like, Christian Kirk and Zay Jones would be awesome if they were your second and third receivers, or your third and fourth receivers. But as 1 and 2, not so much. The one thing their offense has going for them that is a legitimate plus position is Travis Etienne, who has been awesome. And he's been so good coming off that injury a year ago that they were able to actually trade James Robinson to the Jets. That ended up being a pretty good trade for both of those sides, I think. So that's the one thing that just jumps off the page. I mean, defensively, again, there's just not a whole lot that really concerns you right off the rip. I mean, they've got the number 1 overall pick from a year ago, Travon Walker, who
he hasn't been great.
Has not been great. He's had a couple splash plays. He's committed a bunch of penalties. At least it seems like he's committed a bunch of penalties. Josh Allen, the outside linebacker, is a good player. He's not like Nick Bosa, but he's a very solid edge rusher. Their secondary is awful.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just dreadful.
That right there is the biggest reason why I think the Chiefs should experience a lot of offensive success, and why I think the line is sitting where it's sitting right now for this game at 9.5 on FanDuel. They are just so vulnerable in their secondary. Their corners aren't good at really much of anything, zone or man coverage. And so whatever it is they decide to do, they're not going to be as good at it as like Tennessee was this past Sunday night.
How many Jaguars defensive backs can you name?
I mean, I watched their most recent game. I watched them play the Broncos. I do not remember.
Their starters right now at corner are Tyson Campbell and Chris Claybrooks. You could have given me 18 billion chances. I never would have gotten Chris Claybrooks in my life.
I think he was the one that got cooked on the game-winning drive by the Broncos.
Sounds about right. Tyson Campbell was a fairly highly touted player coming out of Georgia last year. And their safeties are Rayshon Jenkins and Andre Sisco. So, I mean, that's not terrible, but
and Jenkins is in the protocol. He didn't practice yesterday.
Yes, good point. His backup is listed as Andrew Wingard.
Oh, out of Wyoming, I believe.
Yeah, there got a couple Wyoming
I think
guys.
He's a Wyoming guy. Am I right? Am I right or am I wrong?
I will pull that up for you right now. Andrew Wingard is from Wyoming.
Thank you.
In his 4th season. He's one of 2 Wyoming guys who are backups for their defense. Shout out to Chad Muma, diabetic. Huge fan of Chad Muma, rookie this year. So they just don't have guys. The front 7 has enough pieces. Like Devin Lloyd, rookie inside linebacker. He's actually been very good this year. He looks like he's going to be a piece for them. Travon Walker, when he was drafted, it was very much you're drafting him because of the upside, not because he's necessarily going to be good now, which is obviously very risky when you have the number 1 overall pick. But there's just not great talent on this team. I guess Marvin Jones is still there. He at one point in time was really good. He's less good now. Their offensive line it's actually worse than I thought. I forgot they added Brandon Sheriff this year, but that's still, I mean, that's one piece out of a 5-man starting group. Is there anything at all that really gives you pause about facing this team right now? I mean, because to me, it comes down to very similarly to what we said with the Titans last week. If you tackle Derrick Henry before he breaks off 10, 15-yard gains repeatedly, you're going to be fine. To me, it comes down to don't allow the chunk plays to Travis Etienne, and you should be just fine.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, too. Travis Etienne's a really good player, but he isn't the kind of runner that Derrick Henry is, and they don't have the kind of offense or offensive line that the Titans have. And historically, there's a reason the Chiefs have struggled with the Titans or teams like the Titans. They struggle a little bit with that kind of smash mouth offensive football, and the Jags don't really do that. Etienne's a good player, but I think the Chiefs match up better with him and with their running game than they do with Tennessee's running game. So do I think that Jacksonville's going to find a new gear necessarily on offense. No, I really don't. I don't think they have that in them against this Chiefs team. The one thing I will say about them is I know their record's 3-6. They have a positive point differential. They're plus 21 on the season in points. So this is not really a 3-6 team. With a little better luck in one-score games, they might be a team above 500. And then you're saying, boy, Jaguars look a little frisky. So I think you have to judge them a little bit more by what the numbers say they are than by what their record says they are, even though, of course, at the end of every year, you are what your record says you are.
They've got 3 wins on the year. Last week, they won by a touchdown, again, in hilarious fashion over the Raiders. Their other 2 wins back in weeks 2 and 3, they shut out the Colts 24-zip, and they blew out the Chargers 38-10. Every one of their losses this year is by 7 or fewer. I'm sorry, they have one loss by 8 points. So they have one loss by 8. Everything else is 7 or fewer points. Every single loss has been a one-score game this year. And some of them have been really darn close. I mean, 13-6 to Houston, that's a bad loss because Houston's no good. But that's one touchdown in a low-scoring game. That's not much. To Denver, 4-point loss. To the Giants, who we think are probably good, 6-point loss. To the Eagles, who are the best team in the NFC, 8-point loss there. Just by 6 to Washington, which is going to flirt with a playoff spot. That was the one good game Carson Wentz played before he got hurt. So they've been frisky. I think that's as much a result of the coaching as it is anything. Like, if this team was still coached by Urban Meyer, they'd be 0-9 this year. Or at least they don't beat the Chargers by 4 touchdowns, and they don't beat the Colts by 3 scores either.
Right.
But they're not losing one-score games last year. They're getting the floor wiped with them. I think having an adult in the room as your head coach, Press Taylor's been around the block. He's their offensive coordinator. Just having some experience and having an actual plan offensively, I think makes this Jaguars team more dangerous. I mean, I don't know what your overall thoughts on Doug Peterson are as a coach. I think he's a pretty darn good coach. I think he's a good quarterback coach.
He's got a ring. I mean, I think he's fine. I don't think he's like an all-timer, but I think he's probably above replacement level as a head coach goes.
I think that's fair. All right, so let's talk about the quarterback here. Because the Chiefs' defense, I think, has played pretty well recently. They played really well in the second half, especially against Tennessee. Now, granted, that was a Tennessee team that wasn't really challenging you through the air at all. Well, they were trying to. It just came up completely short the entire time. What do you make of Trevor Lawrence? Because we're in year 2, and I think there is one camp that is saying we are going to give him an entire another year before we have any reaction because last year was a throwaway. He didn't have a real coach. The team around him was just terrible talent-wise. It was a total throwaway year, so this is really his rookie season. Let's not overreact. There's also another camp that says, hey, he's now played in 26 games, and there's a lot of really new to the NFL mistakes that he continues to make. I tend to lean a little bit more with the first camp, a little bit more with the former. But I do think for a guy who is hyped up to be the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck, you probably would like to see a little bit more out of him than what we've seen so far.
Yeah, some larger steps forward. I'm starting to think that the application of the generational talent or generational franchise quarterback label to him may have been prematurely conferred. He may not be that guy in the end, but I do think he's athletic. I do think he's tough. I do think there are a lot of throws that he can make.
Mm-hmm.
I think where he's still learning, and as young quarterbacks often do, is in the decision-making process. He threw 2 interceptions against Denver that are the reason they lost to the Broncos that were terrible throws. Just wretched throws. No reason at all to make those throws, including one in the end zone that cost him 7 points.
Mm-hmm.
He's only been sacked 10 times this year. And this is interesting. Those 10 sacks have all been concentrated in 4 games. He got sacked twice by the Commanders, 4 times by the Eagles, 4 times by the Colts in the loss in Indianapolis, and twice by the Broncos. He hasn't been sacked in any other game. That tells you he's getting out on the run or he's getting the ball out pretty quick because, again, this is not, on paper, at least a world-beating offensive line. But, yeah, some of the decision-making is still not coming around quite like you would like to see. I think there's better football ahead for Trevor Lawrence, but I think it may have been too hasty to say, hey, this guy is once in a generation. That might have been a little much.
Well, and I think, too, it's understandable why he might have those issues. Look at the dudes he was throwing to when he was at Clemson. Justin Ross, T. Higgins. I mean, all these dudes who were just superstars and were always open. And now you go to the NFL where, like we were talking about with Malik Willis on Monday after the game, hey, Malik, you got to throw the ball at some point. Like, guys do not get college open in the NFL. College open is 5 or 6 yards of separation. That's not a thing in the NFL. Guys generally aren't that wide open on a game-to-game, team-to-team basis. So I'm not entirely surprised that he has had a harder time adjusting to that. Now, the other thought is if he had better guys to throw to instead of end-of-career Marvin Jones, slot receiver Christian Kirk as his number one boundary guy, and another slot dude in Zay Jones, who's fine, but not great, maybe they would have some different results. It's hard to say. I still think you need to give him at least a little bit more time. Like this time next year, if this is the same Trevor Lawrence, I think it's fair to say, yeah, maybe we missed on calling him the kind of prospect that he was generally considered to be. I do think, though, you essentially have to throw out last year. I mean, nobody would have made it happen with that group. Absolutely nobody.
Yeah, it was year -1 for him, and it's unfortunate that they didn't really get to learn anything about him and didn't really put him in any kind of position to succeed. So now you only get essentially 4 years instead of the 5 that you would get when you draft a quarterback in the first round and use the 5th-year option. You get less time to identify and evaluate and see, okay, is this the guy we want to give him second contract to? I still think he's going to end up being that guy, but I don't know. I mean, when this guy was drafted, we thought he could maybe enter the Mahomes class of quarterback in the league. And right now, that would not be where I would bet.
Certainly not. Oh, not even close. We do have a texter on the Big O Tires text line who says he's got a funny Gatorade commercial and he's got great flow.
He does.
He does indeed have
Both of those things are facts.
We talked about this briefly yesterday. Last thing I want to get to for this game. What do you make of the total? Over at FanDuel Sportsbook, 50.5 is the number. We had a comment on the YouTube comments, Sports on 580 WIBW on YouTube. Listener thought a little bit high at 50.5. I'm not sure. I mean, you look at the Jags schedule. They went to 47 last week. They have not gotten to this number since back in week 6 when they lost to the Colts. Otherwise, they've gone 50 or under in every single game to this point this season. I would think that number feels a little bit high. Given the way that defense looks, I'd be more tempted to take a Chiefs team total than I would the game overall total.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. 50.5 is certainly doable if the Chiefs defense struggles against the run in the way they did in the first half against the Titans, because the Jaguars will have a more functional passing game and they'll probably want to go a little bit more up-tempo. Not super fast like a college team, but a little bit more up-tempo, some more snaps than Tennessee was willing to run on Sunday. But, yeah, for me, like if you figure the Chiefs are getting into, like, if the Chiefs get into the 30s, then you probably need the Titans to get to 17 at least.
I just looked it up. Chiefs team total at FanDuel, 30.5. I would take that. In a heartbeat.
Yeah, I'd go over on that for sure.
The Jaguars is 20.5. So, you combine those together, that'd get you to 51. I would much rather take the Chiefs team over. I think they can get to 31 plus points in this game.
Yeah.
Again, that secondary is disastrously bad. And I don't know who is going to get regular pressure on the quarterback because I don't really trust Walker at this point. Lloyd is a nice player in the middle. He's just not a pass rusher.
Their sack leader is DeJuan Smoot. That's the guy leading the team at sacks right now. He's got 5.
He's not even listed as a starter.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that tells you all you need to know about their pass rush up front.
They've got 16 sacks as a team. 5 of those came against the Colts in one game.
Oh, my.
And then 3 of them came against the Broncos, who are also terrible at protecting their quarterback, give up a lot of sacks. So,
yeah, I think that might be one of my best bets of the entire football weekend is Chiefs team total over 30.5.
Yeah, I actually do like that.
We will talk more about this game plenty throughout the day, including coming up at the bottom of the 5 o'clock hour when we are joined by the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, Mitch Holthus. Right now, though, we are going to take a break. Busy rest of the 3 o'clock hour coming your way. We've got some either or over under coming up, plus Rick Peterson will join us later on this hour. It's all coming up on this Thursday edition of 580 Sports Talk. We're back on 580 Sports Talk, 329 on this Thursday, November 10th. Little programming note for you. We do not have a show coming up tomorrow. We are off. We've got a ton of sports action going on here on the Alpha Media Topeka family of stations. So we will not have a show coming up tomorrow.
The K-State women are playing a basketball game at the Milwaukee Brewers Stadium against Wisconsin tomorrow. That tips off at 3:30. K-State men play at Cal. That game tips off at 6. So you're going to hear K-State basketball here on 580 WIBW as you normally would. And the doubleheader begins with pregame coverage at 3 o'clock, which is normally when we would take the mics hot and talk to you folks. Because there's basketball, we have a Friday off of doing the show.
We've also got some Washburn Hoops action coming up tomorrow over on Country 106.9 KTPK. Washburn women in action during the afternoon, and then early evening, late afternoon hours, we've got the Washburn men from Kansas City. Jake will be on the call of the first game. I'll be on the call of the men's game. That's coming up tomorrow on Country 106.9 K-State throughout the afternoon here on 580 WIBW. Tipping off at 6 o'clock Central Time in Berkeley means a 4 o'clock local time tip. Why?
Well, nobody's going anyway. It's Cal basketball.
I guess the thought is tip earlier so then people can come to the game and go out after.
Sure. Get kids coming out of class.
The least want to possible among the power conferences belongs at Cal Berkeley, and I don't really think it's close. All right, time for some either or over under. For mine, we're going to go over under. The Chiefs' win total going into the season was 10.5. They're 6-2 through 8 games with 9 remaining. Give me, or answer for me, over under 12.5 wins for the Chiefs this season. So they would need to win 7, 8, or 9 of 9 or fewer.
7-2 or better gets them to 13, so that would hit the over. Yeah, 7-2 feels about right. It kind of feels like last year where I feel like this team will get better in the second half of the season. I mean, last year, they had that midseason hiccup, and then they pieced it together on offense. They figured out how teams were going to defend them, and they were essentially a juggernaut for the final month and a half of the season and all the way through the first half of the AFC Championship game. I could see that happening again and them going 7-2 over the final 9. I think I'll go over. I think 13-4 sounds about right. God, I still hate that they play an odd number of games. It's so gross.
Yeah, it is gross.
It's just, it's aesthetically unpleasant, 17 game records. But no, 13-4 honestly feels about right, especially coming off of the Tennessee win.
I'm with you as well. I'm also going to go with the over here. There's 2 games that immediately jump out, and I say, okay, yeah, they could certainly, these are potential losses, like realistic losses. At the Bengals on December 4th, I think that's going to be tough. Chase might be back by that point. I think there's actually a reasonable chance he's back by that point since they didn't put him on IR. They expect him back within the next few weeks. Jamar Chase is back. That offense obviously gets better. They were better this past week than they were the week before. They actually got their running game going with Joe Mixon. And then Christmas Eve, they play the Seahawks, who are good. They're very good this year. So both of those games, you could say, yeah, Chiefs should be favored, but you can understand why they would lose either one of those games. The other games they've got, Jaguars, not very good. The Chiefs are way better than the Chargers. The Rams stink. The Broncos stink. The Broncos twice. The Texans are awful. And the Raiders are awful. They should win all those games without a whole lot of stress in any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm going with the over as well. I think 13 wins is absolutely attainable.
Man, you look at the schedule, they should probably go 8-1. And 9-0 is not entirely out of the question either, but it's hard to play perfect football.
Yep.
And they'll lose one of those and maybe 2, but I can't see them losing more than 2 because I think offensively and defensively, they're young players. You know, by the time you hit mid-November, December, your rookies aren't rookies anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think that will especially help the secondary and make the defense overall a little bit stronger as the season goes along. And I think the offense gets better as the season goes too.
We've got a good question here on the Big O Tires text line from the 785 that says, does 13-4 get you the 1 seed? It's possible. It is certainly possible.
Yeah, I mean, pending what it's going to look like for Josh Allen moving forward, 13-4 could absolutely get you there. Now, the Bills would have to lose 3 because obviously they have the tiebreaker.
Mm-hmm.
The Bills have 3 losses in them. I mean, if they come out and they lose to Minnesota this week, I think the Chiefs are looking real good for the 1.
The Bills still have the Vikings, Browns, Lions, the Patriots twice, Jets, Dolphins, Bears, Bengals. Could there reasonably be 3 losses in there? Yes, absolutely. Just like there could reasonably be 2, but only 1 loss the rest of the way for the Chiefs. So, yeah, they're still in play here. So 13-4 probably is enough. Whoever gets the 1 seed, 13-4 sounds like the right record. It's just unfortunate for the Chiefs. If they both finish with the same record, they don't get the tiebreaker.
For my over-under today, since college basketball season is underway, there were 6 Big 12 teams that made the NCAA tournament last season. Over-under 6.5 Big 12 teams in the field of 68 in March.
Ooh, 6.5. I'm going to go the over. Once again, one of the big questions is the league going to cannibalize itself? But I think
there were 2 teams with losing records in conference that made the tournament last year.
KU, Baylor, Texas, TCU, Texas Tech. Those are the 5 that are nailed on, I think. Can you get 2 more out of Iowa State, Oklahoma State, K-State, West Virginia,
and Oklahoma?
Yeah, give me the over. I'm a believer in Oklahoma because I'm a believer in Porter Moser. I think their opener was more of a fluke. Now, if they lose another couple before conference play starts, I will feel a lot worse about them. But I still am a believer in Oklahoma. And I think between those other 4 teams, someone will get in.
Yeah, I mean, given the reputation of the league, it's hard to imagine that they don't get 7. But they did only get 6 last year. I mean, keep in mind, Oklahoma State, they weren't tournament eligible, but they only went 15-15. They wouldn't have made it anyway.
Yeah.
Oklahoma was 19-16. They were the best record overall of any team that missed out. And West Virginia and Kansas State weren't any good. This year, although I do expect Kansas State to be better, I mean, how much better is that going to be? And is that going to be good enough to get to the tournament? Because I don't think West Virginia is a tournament team. I don't think Iowa State or Oklahoma State have tournament rosters either. So I think what you're really asking me is, if you bet the over, I think it's Kansas State. I think maybe I'm chugging too much purple Kool-Aid based on one
this is exciting the time to do it,
half
though.
Against UTRGV. But I'm going to go under. I'm going to say 6 is the number that they land on this year. I'm going to say it's the same 5 who finished the top of the league last year, and then they get 1 more, most likely Oklahoma. And then I don't know about that after that because, the bottom of the league, that was the problem last year. Like Oklahoma with 7-11 in conference. Yeah. If they'd gotten to 500, they would have gotten in,
Yeah. Yeah, I remember a lot of guffawing about that, but hey, you don't finish 4 games under 500 in conference play.
Yeah, I mean, the 4 losses won a share of the league last year. So it was a very real possibility that happens again this year. And that as a result, the teams down the standings are finishing with 11, 12 league losses or 10 league losses. And that could be enough to ding them and keep them out.
One texter from the 785 checks in and says, I don't want Oklahoma in it because then I won't have to hear Boomer Sooner after they make every basket. Another one says, I've got K-State going 8-10 in the Big 12. I think that for me would be like best case scenario.
Yeah, I think if they go 8-10, Jerome Tang might have a shot at Coach of the Year in the Big 12.
And they're a tournament team if that's the case.
Yeah.
Because they do not have an especially difficult non-conference.
No, they should get them around 20 wins, you would think, if they take care of their business in the non-con. I do agree. I don't think they're going to finish last. I think West Virginia's going to finish last.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would agree. Real quick, before we get to Rick Peterson and our Invista Credit Union High School whip around, Dan, you've got a word for us from FanDuel.
Yeah, if you like to play overs and unders, now is perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. It's free bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just sign up with my promo code Lucero. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from the money lines, point spreads, player props, futures bets, parlays, and you get your winnings paid fast on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So sign up today with promo code Lucero for your no-sweat first bet. That's promo code LUCERO, and make every moment more this season with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 and present in Kansas. First online real money wager only. Refund issues non-withdrawable free bets. Expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
Let's take a timeout. When we come back on the other side of this break, Rick Peterson will join us for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around here on 580 Sports Talk.
Can't lose.
The football team at my high school, they were tough.
And that makes Rick a citizen of the world.
Rick Peterson covers high school sports better than anybody else over at topsports.news with the best coverage of all of our teams throughout Topeka and Shawnee County. You can also follow Pistol on Twitter at Peterson_Rick, and he joins us every Thursday for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Round. And Pistol, you've been a busy man this afternoon. You were just at Shawnee Heights for a signing ceremony, if I'm not mistaken.
Jeremiah Smith, the number one 100 meters guy in state history, picked Nebraska. Had also considered Iowa and Oklahoma, but picked Nebraska following another former T-Bird, Mikey Hoffer, to the Huskers.
Well, that is just so cool for Jeremiah Smith, who I know had his season end not a way he wanted to with an injury this past year, but so cool for him. And that's pretty cool, too, for Shawnee Heights Pistol, that they've now got a little bit of a pipeline going there with the Nebraska Cornhusker program.
Yeah, that speaks very highly of the program.
Let's also really quickly get to some of the other big signings from around the area. I know there's so many; it's very difficult to keep up with all of them, or frankly, to come even close to it. But who are some of the other big names that either we may have already known, or who maybe we didn't know about, who signed their letters of intent this week?
Well, Mackenzie Jones of Topeka West is probably just finishing up signing her volleyball letter of intent with Kansas State. That's a big one. And Faith Shields of Topeka High is going to, they call it Kansas City now. It's still UMKC to me, but she's going there. She's going to sign, I believe, next week. And you're right. Taylor Rottinghouse is going to Washburn volleyball to follow her sister Faith Rottinghouse to the Ichabod. And then Lois Dieter, the star golfer from Seaman, is going to Arkansas Tech. And like you say, and there's a whole bunch more that I'm not getting to, but it's a fun time of year for these kids.
No, it's extremely fun, and it's just so cool to see all the schools showing love to our local athletes and all the athletes getting to realize their dreams of getting to go on and play college sports. So it is very cool. And again, for all the best coverage of all of this, write-ups on a ton of the athletes locally, head over to topsports.news. Pistol and the crew over there do such a good job covering all of our local teams and athletes. And Pistol, we've got plenty to get to today from some all-county teams and whatnot and the end of a couple seasons, but we do want to start on the gridiron. We've still got two teams from the city that will be in action coming up this weekend, or tomorrow night anyway. So let's start there, and let's actually start in the smaller classes this time. We'll go to 3A and the Hayden Wildcats, who are coming off of maybe their biggest win of the year, knocking off previously undefeated Wellsville. And even before we look ahead to this Friday's game, Pistol, that was a phenomenal game for Hayden, a situation they haven't been in many times this year, going behind early, but to come back, show some resilience, still knock off a previously undefeated team. I think there's an argument, and maybe Bill Arnold would feel the same way. That was one of the best wins that Hayden has had all season.
A couple things. One, just brutal conditions, just absolutely brutal conditions. They get down 13-0. Finn Dunshee kind of fumbles the kickoff and then runs it back like 90 yards. And after that, they just kind of turned things around. They still had like 8 fumbles, I believe, lost 3. But they did everything they needed to pull out a very, very big win.
And I think, too, the thing that stands out to me, Pistol, about this Hayden team this year is the fact that they are so well balanced. And not to throw any criticism at any former players, but it just feels like offensively, obviously the run game is such a big deal, but they've got so many different guys. The wings, the fullbacks, they're all obviously very talented. They've got a passing game that looks as good as they've had in several years there at Hayden. The defense is very balanced, front 7 defensive backs as well. I mean, I'm trying to think. It's been several years since we've seen a team as balanced, just talent-wise, on both sides of the ball as this Hayden group this year, and that bodes well for picking up another win tomorrow night.
Yeah, and I think they have an excellent chance to keep going. I think it's a long trip, but I think they'll take care of business. And I think, Brendan, last week helps in that regard. I think they're back on the road. It's going to be very cold tomorrow night. I don't know about precipitation, but I think last week will help them know what they got in store for them tomorrow night.
We're speaking with Rick Peterson from TopSports.News. It's our 580 Sports Talk and Vista Credit Union High School Whip Around. You can follow Rick on Twitter at Peterson_Rick, and you can check out all of his work over at TopSports.News covering our high school and preps teams here in Topeka and Shawnee County. The other city team that is still alive in the postseason, Pistol, up in Class 6A, the Washburn Rural Junior Blues. And before we get to Derby, because I know Derby is a tremendous team, a tremendous program. We all know that at this point. But I would argue, even though they haven't been the highest scoring games of anyone in the postseason, I don't know that many schools in any level have been more impressive through their first 2 games than Washburn Rural. With they were favored obviously by seed in their first game, but then an upset win by seed in their second game. Pistol, they're outscoring their opponents 70-7 through the first 2 weeks of the playoffs. That is as good of a point differential as pretty much anybody in the state through these first 2 weeks of the postseason.
Yeah, the first week, I thought they'd handle Dodge City pretty good. I knew Dodge City had some personnel changes and some things like that. I thought they'd handle. I thought last week would go down to the wire, and they just come out and just took control. They they really dominated that game. I thought they'd win that game. They won it by a lot more than I thought they would.
So this matchup then coming up tomorrow night. They're taking on Derby, multiple state championships in recent years, one of the best programs in the state, and in recent years they've been even ranked maybe the best program, one of the best programs in the entire country, number one in the state of Kansas. What is Washburn Rural going to have to do to try to play their kind of football against a Derby team that normally just imposes their will on everybody? What's Washburn Rural going to have to do to try to swing things back in its favor?
Well, they gotta have a good start. You know, you get down to Derby by 13-0, like we were talking about with Hayden last week. You're going to have a tough time because, you know, they can just give it the ball to Dylan Edwards time and time again and keep the ball on the ground. So Rural really needs to get off to a good start. Let Derby know early that they're in for a game. And the longer that game goes, that Rural can stay in it, they give themselves a chance.
I do want to get just final thoughts on the season for the other two teams from the county. They got knocked out of the postseason this past week. First, from the city, Shawnee Heights, 5-5 on the year, second straight year with a playoff win. And frankly, Pistol, I know they got shut out, but 24-0 in bad weather to keep that game within relative striking distance for most of the night. I thought that was a pretty darn good performance in the final game of the year for Shawnee Heights against Mill Valley. And again, 5-5 with a playoff win is a pretty strong season for Coach Jason Swift's group.
Yeah, I just talked to Coach Swift a little bit ago, and I think he really felt good about this year. You know, they didn't know what they had necessarily, and Alan Bauman, and he goes 1,500 yards. He'll be back. They got some other guys, good receivers that are back. They're going to have a couple of young quarterbacks I think they like, and they're going to keep moving forward.
And for Rossville, they have their season come to an end also at 5-5. They won a playoff game as well this year, but obviously they are used to winning state championships. They had won each of the last two in Class 2A. Nemaha Central, phenomenal year for the Thunder this year. But for Rossville, to win a playoff game and to still make it 2 rounds into the postseason, despite losing all they lost after last year's championship, I know it's not quite the same, but that's still nothing to hang your head about if you're Derek Thomas's group.
No, and I go back to when they ran off 3 in a row and lost all those people. It took them a while to come back, and then look what happened. They come back and win 2 in a row. So I think this was kind of, I hate this word, but I think it was kind of a rebuilding year for them. They got, their quarterback, Camden Horrock, back, some other really good, one of their best linemen back in Leeds. I think they're going to be right back to where you're used to seeing them.
Just a couple more questions for Rick Peterson from topsports.news on our Invista Credit Union High School whip around here on 580 Sports Talk. A couple of notes from some other sports around the area, Pistol. We didn't get to talk about the end of the boys' soccer season this past week. So Washburn Rural, again, does not quite make it all the way on the boys' side of things, but they still get darn near to the end of the postseason. And look, I know it's tough to come up short several years in a row, but that's still a season that if you are head coach Brian Hensel and the rest of that program, you've got to be pretty happy about.
Oh, sure. I mean, 2-1 goal off. I mean, and then in the semifinal, against a very good team, they could have been right there. And then, they were tied late against Dodge City in the third place game. So no, they're not going away. They're never going away as long as Brian Hensel's there. He's got a juggernaut going there. Let's see, the last 3 years they went 4-2-4. They're going to be right there again.
I also wanted to ask you real quick about the All-Shawnee County volleyball team. You just put that out on topsports.news yesterday. I was reading through it yesterday, and it's somewhat unbelievable, Pistol, how much talent is on the all-county team this year on the volleyball court.
Well, I kept after adding players. I'm not one of those guys that likes to put a ton of players on a first team, but there was 10 players that I couldn't leave off. And you have a state championship team. You have another team that made it to the Final Four. You had really, really good teams in 3A in Rossville and Silver Lake. You have Mackenzie Jones that we just talked about going to K-State. It was a tough job for me to just try to whittle that down to some sort of semblance of a few numbers.
Yeah, it is remarkable. And at least a half a dozen players who are going to go on and play college volleyball or a different college sport at the Division I level in Zoe Canfield's regard. Just an unbelievable amount of talent on the volleyball court here in Shawnee County this year. Rick Peterson covers all things prep sports over at topsports.news. Head to the website for the best coverage of all of our local high schools. You can follow Pistol on Twitter as well. His handle is @Peterson_Rick. And he joins us every Thursday for our Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around. What's your plan for this weekend, Pistol? Where are you headed to? Are you headed to anything this weekend?
I'm going to try to monitor the 2 football games and then cover Washburn University's women's. They open their season with back-to-back games on Friday and Saturday, and I'm going to try to go to those games and then also keep track of the Washburn men. So I'm just kind of thin.
hey, that just means more great coverage for us to get to check out over at topsports.news. We appreciate the time, Pistol. Thanks so much.
You betcha.
That is Rick Peterson from topsports.news. So cool for both of the football teams in the city that are still active this year, Hayden and Washburn Rural. I think going into the year, we generally expected those were probably your 2 best teams on paper in the city. It was a really entertaining year of football across Topeka, but the fact that those 2 are still alive, Hayden's got a real good chance against Columbus. Not to say Washburn Rural doesn't also have a chance. I mean, that's an extremely talented team that's won 8 games for a second straight year for a reason. They're just going up against one of the most consistent programs in the entire country in Derby coming up tomorrow night. Don't forget, tomorrow night, after all the games are done, right here on 580 WIBW and across the Kansas Information Network will be the Kansas High School Football Scoreboard Show with Eric Peterson. He'll have scores and reports for you from all the games around the state coming up tomorrow night. Right now, though, that'll do it for the 3 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, we've got Crosstalk with Fulton. We'll pick today's winner for What Is Wrong With You, and we will look ahead to what could be a very busy weekend in the Big 12. That's all next hour on 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you. And we'll be joined in just a moment by Fulton Caster for a little crosstalk as well. Appreciate you spending some of your afternoon hours with us. If you want to be a part of the show, feel free to text in on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. You can also chime in on the YouTube comments. Sports on 580 WIBW is the YouTube channel, where we stream every single edition of 580 Sports Talk. And we can see the comments right as you type them in. So if you have anything to say and you're watching the stream, feel free to comment and let us know your thoughts on whatever we're talking about on the show today. We've got Fulton joining us for Crosstalk here in just a hot second. We've got today's What is Wrong with You coming up in just over 15 minutes or so. And then we'll look ahead to what could be a very busy weekend in the Big 12 on the football side of things. K-State versus Baylor. That's one of the biggest games of the year, frankly, with both of those two teams in the hunt for a spot in the Big 12 championship game. Want to get to something that Tim Fitzgerald brought up yesterday on the show as well. That kind of reminds me of Big 12 basketball a little bit, where we were talking about cannibalizing the conference and how that might keep some teams out of the NCAA tournament. Feels a little bit like that with the Big 12 football slate as well. TCU, Texas this weekend, KU versus Texas Tech. A lot of games to get to, so we'll talk about all that coming up later on this hour here on 580 Sports Talk. Do not forget, we do not have a show tomorrow. We are off because of K-State men's and women's basketball right here on 580 WIBW. The K-State women, they are taking on Wisconsin at American Family Insurance Field. I don't know what the full name of it is, but it used to be Miller Ballpark up in Milwaukee. The K-State men are then at 6 o'clock taking on Cal in Berkeley. So no show for us coming up tomorrow. So this is our final day of the week. You will be able to hear Mic'd Up tomorrow, though. And speaking of Mic'd Up, we now welcome in one of the two members of that show. That is Fulton Caster. What's going on, Fulton?
I'm doing good, guys. How are you?
Doing pretty well. This Jaguars game against the Chiefs on Sunday.
Yes.
We led off the show asking, is there anything the Jaguars do that actually gives you any pause? And the only thing we could really come down to is because Trevor Lawrence has been up and down, and it's effectively his rookie year all over again. Their wide receiver talent's not great. Their front seven has a couple pieces that are nice, but it's not really imposing, and their secondary is awful. Does anything other than Travis Etienne give you any pause about this game coming up on Sunday?
You know, when I've tried to think about this game and what it could do, what it could bring, and how to play out, not much outside of Travis Etienne breaking off some big runs, because Trevor Lawrence has skill and he has talent and he's going to be able to push the ball down the field. But I have enough confidence in the way these Chiefs corners have played. I mean, Christian Kirk doesn't scare me. Zay Jones doesn't scare me. You know, Evan Ingram at tight end doesn't scare me. You know, they're receiving.
If he can go.
If he can go, even. Like, their receiving options are the thing that make me less worried about Trevor Lawrence, because I feel like those are guys that the Chiefs corners and the Chiefs back end scheming should be able to handle. The offensive line has been better for Jacksonville this year with all the investment they put in it. So getting pressure on Lawrence might be a little bit more difficult. But outside of the simple fact that Travis Etienne has been just running like crazy these past few weeks, the offense of Jacksonville just doesn't really scare me that much. Then on the defensive side of things, they got some nice players at a few spots. They obviously have Josh Allen to try and rush the passer, but overall, this is a Jags team that I think will still put up a fight and will try and keep this game close. But as long as the Chiefs don't play with their food, they should be able to win this game relatively with ease.
All right, so we did over-under earlier in the show. 12.5 wins for the Chiefs. The preseason number was 10.5. 12.5 wins. Can they go 7-2 or better the rest of the way? Because the schedule is not especially imposing.
Yeah, the schedule is what I'm pulling up here. I mean, they'll beat the Jags. Let's go with what I think they can win. They can beat the Jags. They can beat the Rams. They can beat the Broncos twice. I'm putting already that's just 2 wins. They beat the Texans. There's 5. You beat the Raiders. There's 6. Can they beat the Chargers? Of course. I honestly would pencil that to more of a win at this point. The Bengals, especially, they don't have Jamar Chase. That's a lot easier.
I do. and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm off on this. I said it earlier. I actually do think he's going to be back by that game because it's another, 3 weeks from now?
It's another 3 weeks. There's a chance. When they originally discussed the timeline of the injury with him being possibly going on IR and different things like that, it was, 6 to 8 weeks. When it's been reevaluated, it's come up to be maybe a possible shorter time frame.
Mhm.
So Jamar Chase could be back in the Cincinnati game. We do not know, but he could. So I think that's worth considering. The two games where I think they have the highest chance of losing are the Chargers on the road, because it's hard to win on the road, and the Chargers always seem to play the Chiefs close.
Yeah, it's the Chargers Super Bowl. Like
it truly is.
The version of the Chargers that plays the Chiefs every year is, I am convinced, the version that everybody has in their head when they make preseason predictions.
I'm with you 100%.
That's the flashpoint game of Brandon Staley's career, right?
It might be.
Yeah.
It might be. He might have to win that. Otherwise, the seat under Brandon Staley starts to get a little hot.
A little hot. And then, their other toughest game is, and Dan, you're hearing this, it's Seattle.
Yeah.
Seattle is a tough game on Christmas Eve. Because unless Geno Smith falls off a cliff, that man is slinging it. They've run the ball really well with Kenneth Walker.
That's also going to be a major test for the secondary and how young it is now.
TK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, have fun, boys.
Because it's essentially
good day.
It's all rookies and Snead, who's only 3 years into his career now.
Yeah.
We know Snead's a good player. That's not trying to take anything away from him.
No.
But that is a very young group that's got to go up against, the Adonis that is DK Metcalf, if he's healthy enough to play. And by that point of the year, I hope he is.
Should be.
And Tyler Lockett, who is one of the... She's still underrated.
Tyler Lockett? Not around here, he's not.
Not around
here. Definitely not around
Just
here.
in a general sense.
I think in a general sense, like people, you ask people to name like top tier wide receivers, probably take them a while before they get to Tyler Lockett, but like the numbers don't lie. He's had a very good career. He's a wide receiver one. Like
I would agree.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'd agree. So roundabout way, I would take the over. I think they can get to 13 wins, because I see only two potential losses on this back half. And it would be either at LA, could be a loss. Home against Seattle could be a loss. At Cincinnati would be the other third toss-up there, because I don't know if they're going to have Chase or not. And Cincinnati did play them well last year, and it is on the road. But outside of that, you cannot tell me, unless something crazy happens, that the Denver Broncos can beat this team.
Nope.
You can't.
No. Not going to happen. Thursday Night Football tonight, by the way.
Yeah. Sure, it's potentially football.
So are you going to watch?
So bad.
It's a football-like substance.
Is a football-like substance.
So here's the question. Is this, because you obviously KU fan.
Yeah.
KU plays tonight.
Yep.
Jayhawks versus North Dakota State, the Bison. Is this a split screen night? Is this I've got action on the NFL game, so I'm going to watch that? Or is this I cannot possibly watch Falcons Panthers, so I'm watching college hoops night?
This is a KU and the Bison get the big screen.
Okay.
Because the Hawks just got it at this point. And this is the Thursday Night Football game will be on a second screen. Which of my second screens it'll be, don't know how much energy I'm going to devote to setting it up, because there is action I have on this game, so therefore I'll be interested. But the dedicated watching is KU North Dakota State. That's the dedicated watching.
Are you in the same boat? Or do you and your wife have like DVR to get to?
I think we might be watching Law and Order tonight.
Okay.
We might give KU the first half, and then in the second half start catching up on tonight's Law and Order.
Listen, man, Law and Order is going to be more exciting than any of the sports you're going to be on the
field. Isn't it like a 3-hour super crossover?
Yes. No. They did that to open the season. It's just a 3-hour block now. It goes regular like OG Law and Order, then SVU, and then organized crime. Organized crime is actually, to me, the more riveting of the three.
That's the one that has the Burn Notice guy, right?
The Burn Notice guy?
Yeah, isn't the guy who was in Burn Notice on that show?
Organized crime is the one, Christopher Maloney, the guy who used to be on SVU.
Yeah.
Stabler.
Yeah.
Well, no. I know he's the main character, but Jeffrey Donovan.
No, Jeffrey Donovan's one of the new police officers on the new Law and Order.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's on the OG.
I do not like his character. I do not like the new Law and Order is our hate watch.
Okay.
Like we watch that and we critique it the whole time. Like, oh my God, this is so overwritten. This is so heavy-handed. Like, we genuinely don't like it. And the other two, it's a warm-up for the Law and Orders that are actually good.
Okay.
That's fair.
All right. That's fair enough. I haven't watched any sort of Law and Order
and
in a long
it breaks
time.
my heart
Same.
that new Law and Order is bad, because like the OG 20 season run of Law and Order, I'm not kidding you, I've watched every episode. That was what I was doing during quarantine.
Just watching Law and
I
Order.
was burning through the Law and Order marathons. I'm like 3 different networks show them.
Yeah.
So I had them
Oh, yeah.
all on my DVR, and I did. I ripped through all 20 seasons.
I never go out of my way to watch Law and Order, but anytime I'm at the gym, it seems to be the time that Law and Order SVU is being played on USA, and one of the TVs
At
there
the
is on
gym?
USA.
That's a wild thing to put on
Well,
TV at the
It's
gym,
just-
man.
They have USA Network on, and it's just there. So I'm just doing cardio, and I'm watching Law and Order SVU. Apparently,
I didn't know you were a gym guy.
yeah, I care a little bit more about my body and want to try and
Oh,
my health.
okay,
No,
Mr. Olympia
sorry.
over there.
No,
You ugly scrubs.
Oh my God. That's not what I meant. I meant more of I want to get a little more, get my health in a better place, more, and just better overall shape. So yeah, if people don't, that's your thing. That's just
I'm
so
built
bad.
different.
I'm not built different.
So what's the routine?
Most days it's at least 2 to 3 of the days of the week is just long form cardio because that just gets it done through there.
What is long form cardio?
About 2 miles of
Oh, okay.
running, jogging, what have you.
Cardio done by Wright Thompson.
Yes, done by Red Thompson. And then mixed into that is just either light arms day, light back day, light leg day. I'm new to all of this, so there's not like a set routine. I'm not a gym bro or a gym head guy, but
I used to go to the gym every single day, but I only ran. I did not.
that's what I
ever...
spend most of my time doing because it's a way that can get you. Because like my main goal is just to trim off some pounds, and so that's a good way to do it. And I mean, the amount of walking I have to do for different aspects of this job, I'm just trying to get my cardio up so I stop sucking wind when I climb stairs for press boxes.
I haven't been to a gym since 2017.
Really?
That's
Really.
Was that a regular thing, or you just like happened to stop by?
I wanted it to be a regular thing, and then I stopped, and I haven't been back.
That's fair.
That's
I
fine.
never lift because I know you know what I look like. Like this
And now
is
the
not
people do, too.
deceptive muscle. Like I don't have
No.
much upper body strength, and I don't want to be around the people who are like wearing cut off tank tops and are like chugging the gigantic industrial sized jugs of water.
Mhm.
Like
Gym guy or
Yeah.
gym gal in some cases can be very intimidating
yeah,
for people who are not like regulars to the gym.
yeah. So I stick with the cardio. I get on the bike. That's how I spend my time. I haven't been to the gym I went for a couple weeks and then I stopped again because I had other things to do, like go home and play video games instead.
Facts. That's
Any-
what I decided 5
To-
years
to-
ago.
To be very clear, any of the days that I'm like, I'm not going to go into the gym today, it's because I'm like, man, I want to go home and play X video game because I just want to.
Honestly, if I could bring my Nintendo to the gym, I probably would. I'll
do
just
it.
sit on the bike and
Yeah. Just
Sit
do
on your
a,
bike,
do
play
a
the-
slow
play on my
walk,
Switch.
the
Yeah.
slow walk on the
I mean-
treadmill, and yeah.
Brendan, the new Pokemon comes out in like a week.
I know.
Just grab that.
It's on my Christmas list.
Can you
Same.
catch them all at the gym?
catch most of them?
I don't know why not. Maybe that's how I'll convince myself to go back. I'll bring the Switch one day. By the way, since this is sports talk,
Yes.
KU North Dakota State tonight.
Yep.
Initial thoughts, worries, concerns. Initial worries or concerns after Monday's game.
Not really. The only thing that ever becomes like an idea of a warrior concern, I think very much KU needs to figure out what they're going to do at the 5 and get something settled on a true decision at a big man before Big 12 play at least. Because, I mean, they're only I think most of their non-con games they can work through without it. I mean, Duke might be a problem and some of the higher level competition, but overall you can work through what you have because KJ Adams, for as great as he is and his versatility and his athleticism, everything, he's not a college level 5 who could probably bang down low with the biggest of big dudes. And also, more important than that is his lack of an offensive game just kills you.
Yep.
It tightens the floor too much. So I am really intrigued to see if Ernest Uday gets more of a run tonight. Because what I saw in game 1, if he builds up right, that is a genuine guy you can have play the 5 and not be an offensive sinkhole.
I do just wonder not even if, but at what point we start to see him get starter type minutes or
I'm with
just
you.
be the starter this year because he's so raw.
And that's the only problem.
Because
he's so raw.
He also doesn't really have much of an offensive game. But he is more effective because the one move he has is catch, lob, and dunk.
I mean, he has the one move that Doak had, just not as great as it was early on in his career. Doak later actually became a much more well-rounded offensive player. I don't think he gets enough credit for that. But like early on in Doak's career, he was useful offensively because he had one move, but it was an explosive move of you throw that up high, that big man's going to go get it. Do you
realistically think we're going to get those kind of minutes at all this year? We know how much trust is important, and the coaching staff clearly trusts KJ Adams to at least some degree.
I feel it probably won't happen because trust is so important, and they want guys to. It's always for Bill Self, especially with freshmen, do the little things right.
Mm-hmm.
And I worry that they're just going to want to be more patient with Uday because of the things he needs to do. And KJ Adams, at least defensively, has earned Bill Self's trust. He knows that he can put KJ Adams out there in that 5-man spot, and he's going to defend his tail off, be a guy on the floor, and do what he can do. I just think because also the other fact is this, KJ Adams is not a real big rim protector.
No, he's only 6'7".
Yeah, it's his athleticism gives him a chance. Ernest Uday is a legit rim projector projection because he's big, he's tall, he's long, he can jump. I mean, you saw what he was doing in that first matchup against Omaha. I think if he develops more, he also gives you something you haven't had since Doak, which is a legit rim protector. Because Dan McCormick never was that. That was never his thing to be I'm going to be a dominant, you can't come in my paint guy.
Yeah.
I think Uday has a chance for that too. So it's just, I'm trying not to get so caught up in what great flashes I saw in one game.
How many freshmen ever are that, though?
Few.
Very few.
Very few.
Anthony Davis.
Yeah, Anthony Davis.
Yeah, you're talking about a guy who's a top 5 pick in the NBA draft, multi-time All-Star.
Yeah.
Is he the best one and done ever?
He's up there.
He's up there.
That's a great question. Who are the best?
That is an awesome.
Man,
I could spend the rest of the day thinking about that.
I think you could possibly make an argument that it's Anthony Davis.
You could.
Like that Kentucky team that won the title was obviously very talented in general.
When you add in like the team success, like it's him or it's Carmelo Anthony. I think those are your answers.
Yeah, Melo was so good.
And Melo did win. They both won titles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's between those two. Gut reaction. It's either Melo or Anthony Davis.
Yeah, I think that's a fair number. Or I think that's fair. I think I'd lean Davis, but yeah, Melo is a good option too. Real quick, last thing. KU's favored by 23.5 tonight. Do they cover that?
I think they cover.
North Dakota State only lost by 18 to Arkansas, who's also very good.
I know. I'm going to go with the cover tonight, though.
All right.
Risky play.
We are off tomorrow. You are not. What do you have going on Mic'd Up tomorrow afternoon?
Tomorrow afternoon, going to be a lot of previewing going on. We'll get you ready for Chiefs and Jags with our Chiefs keys to the game. We'll get that going on. We'll look at KU and their big match against Texas Tech. We'll take a look at K-State and Baylor and see what are the ways that the local teams up here in the Northeast and D1 can try and get some wins.
All right. We're looking forward to that noon to 3 tomorrow right here on 580 WIBW. It's Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton. Fulton, appreciate the time.
Always happy to be here, guys.
That'll do it for Crosstalk. Let's take a break here on the program. When we come back on the other side of this break, it's time for today's What Is Wrong With You? 2 new stories trying to take down the folks who robbed a Ross and then crashed into each other. That's next on 580 Sports Talk.
What do you call a
It's time for What is Wrong with You here on 580 Sports Talk on this Thursday, November 10th, our final show of the week, which means this is our championship match for the week and our second week of November. Our current reigning winner is the pair of thieves that robbed a Ross Dress for Less. They wanted to dress for nothing, so they robbed the place. And then they got in two different getaway cars, left the parking lot via two different roads, and then crashed into each other, and then left on foot from the crash and were shortly thereafter apprehended. Do not know if they got any of the merch, if they ran away with the merch, or what. That's one of those situations where I guess it's kind of fight or flight. Like, hey, we could just sit here and admit defeat because we clearly screwed this up to the umpteenth degree, or we just say we're too deep into this now, let's just run for it. I mean, I guess what else do you have to lose? Like, oh, wow, you threw in a resisting arrest charge as well. Like, whoop-de-doo. We already have theft and shoplifting on our records at this point. We've got two news stories today, though. Dan, why don't you go first today?
We got an all-time headline from the Smoking Gun for this one. Woman cops to meat beating at Ohio Walmart.
Excuse me?
Woman cops to meat beating at Ohio Walmart. So we meet 27-year-old Manika Garner, who has made a deal with prosecutors and pleaded no contest to disorderly conduct in connection with her attack on a former neighbor. She had originally been charged with assault. She's received a 30-day suspended jail sentence, placed on probation for a year. So she was at a Walmart in Ohio, suburban Cleveland, Euclid, and she encountered Precious Jackson, 37-year-old, who was shopping with her 7-year-old daughter. Garner was accompanied by her 5-year-old son. Jackson had lived downstairs from Garner in a duplex in University Heights, another Cleveland suburb, and had previously secured a protection order against her ex-neighbor. Now, we don't know why these ex-neighbors had beef, no pun intended, but clearly it extended through and beyond the time in which the two were neighbors. When Garner confronted Jackson in the Walmart potato chip aisle, she threatened to beat up Jackson and her daughter. Garner then allegedly pulled down Jackson's face mask and attempted to spit on her. When the spit missed the target, Garner reached into Jackson's cart and retrieved a $22 meat log, one of those 660-ounce, 10-pound logs of frozen ground beef. Cops described it as a blunt object in an arrest report. Garner, investigators charged, struck Jackson a couple of times in the face with the 10-pound log of prepackaged ground beef. She was arrested at the scene. Jackson was not injured. You hit somebody with a 10-pound frozen block of meat and you don't do any damage?
That seems unbelievable.
Right?
Also, this woman had her own 5-year-old son with her.
Right.
Like,
modeling really good behavior for your child.
Yeah, no. Look, I don't have my own children at this point in my life, but I would imagine when you're in that situation, you do probably act a little bit differently in public. Like, or when you're driving or something, man, usually I'd go faster here or I would try to shoot the gap. No, unfortunately, I have a 2-year-old in the car. I'm not going to do that anymore. Like, if you're in public, you probably don't want to make an ass of yourself like this with your 5-year-old there, because then they are going to think that's okay to do.
So a texter on the Big O Tires text line says that if it's frozen solid, that's a deadly weapon.
Yeah.
The initial charge was not assault with a deadly weapon. So for whatever reason, they did not consider this particular blunt object to be a deadly weapon. Like, I'm sure there are other things that were like 10-pound solid that would have been considered deadly weapons, but not some frozen ground beef. You ever get one of those big 10-pound meat logs? See, the problem is when you live as a single man, which I did for quite a while.
Texter said it must have been thawed.
Like lightly, it was just thawed enough.
Just a little soft.
Like when you're when you're a single man, 10 pounds of ground beef is a little much. Like I was gifted a 10, long story. I used to get thanked in like meat. when I lived in Western Kansas, which again, very Western Kansas thing. If I would do, go a little bit of an extra mile for one of our salespeople at our station in Northwest Kansas, shout out to the legend, Paul Heskett. He would thank me by acquiring some, ground beef or steaks, or one time it was a roast. But one time he got me a 10-pound log of ground beef. I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with this. Like, I can't cook it all at once. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I guess I could refreeze it, like, theoretically, but also I don't have the tools to cook 10 pounds of ground beef at once. And I'm certainly not going to cook like half of it once and then half of it another time. Like, I didn't really know what to do with that. So I asked to, stay with the 1 pound, little chubs. A little bit more practical for me.
I guess in theory, you could just spend literally your entire day like cooking burgers.
I could have had a cookout.
Yeah, just like the entire day is we're just making burgers.
I could have fed an entire apartment complex.
Yeah, you could have.
Anyway,
invite the neighbors over.
Woman and neighbor still had some beef, no pun intended. She hit him with a frozen log of beef.
That's unbelievable. Come on, man. My story is going to take us to the Palm Coast of Florida, where a man is accused of striking a traffic control worker with his Porsche after the two got in an argument over where he could go with his vehicle, according to the Flagler County Sheriff's Office. We go to Flagler County a lot. Authorities said that the worker, who works for a private company in charge of repaving the roadway on Camino del Mar Parkway, was directing one-way traffic through the Palm Coast area at 1:30 1 week ago today, November 3rd, when he noticed that the driver of a black Porsche, later identified as a 76-year-old man named Donald Steinley, had entered the single lane of travel when it was not his turn. The victim tried to stop Steinley to prevent a head-on collision, the FCSO said in a news release, but Steinley reportedly became, quote, irate and yelled at the victim before revving the vehicle's engine and lunging forward, hitting the victim in the legs. After the worker was hit, deputies say he moved out of the way and the driver continued onto Granada Drive. The worker was not seriously hurt and was able to actually grab his phone and capture a picture of the vehicle's license plate, which he then sent on to the sheriff's office, and deputies were able to then find Steinley 90 minutes later when they arrested him with the charge of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. He has since posted bond and has been released from jail. This man nearly caused a crash in a construction zone, and instead of just saying, my bad, or just being like a normal person and just yelling alone in the car, decided to yell alone in his car and then hit the guy.
Yeah, that's wild. Using your car as a weapon.
So is this not one of those situations where you get 10 years in jail for hitting a worker?
Might be. Could be.
That is the penalty for it, right?
Now, they did consider his car to be a deadly weapon. Aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. So a car more significant than a 10-pound meat log.
Things happen on a daily basis in the news or on What Is Wrong With You where I just think, how are people like this? Like,
right.
This is getting like into news stuff and like kind of out of the realm of What Is Wrong With You. I don't know if you followed this story about the University of Kentucky student who said like the most unfathomably awful things I've ever heard someone say to another person.
Horrible instance of racism, yes.
Yeah, like unfathomable. She's been kicked out of Kentucky, by the way, and they said she can't re-enroll. They just kicked her off campus permanently. But I watched this video, and I'm like, how, even if you have those kind of like thoughts in your brain, how do you spend 10 minutes expelling those out of your mouth to other people? Like, how do you think of that? How do you, as this person in this Porsche, think I'm going to hit this guy with my car and I'm just going to get off scot-free for it? How does one's brain work like that?
Yeah, that is the question. What is the matter with your brain?
It's unfathomable to me why someone would think this is okay. So that's my story. Was yours? Yours was in Ohio. This is a classic Florida versus Ohio battle. Who you got for today?
I'm going to go with the meat beating.
Yeah. How did she hit them with it? Like, was it one hand and she was
like
just wailing?
Over the top like a tomahawk, or you swing it like a baseball
I was going to say, was she going like a bat with two hands? Like a hatchet almost?
Well, she didn't do any damage. I feel like if she was two-handing it, there might have been some injuries. So I probably just a wild swing with one hand.
Yeah, you're probably right about
thinking.
that.
Yeah.
with kids around, man.
I know.
Imagine the two little kids, because the victim had their 7-year-old daughter with them too.
Right.
So imagine those two kids just looking at each other like, why is your mom doing that? Why is your mom doing that? Unbelievable. That wins today. I'm with you. The meat beating. Does that take down our Ross thieves?
No. Dress for less.
They crashed into each other. It's just, I don't know how your brain works like that. I don't know how you don't like go in complete opposite directions. Because it'd be one thing if you were going to go to different places with it and try to split up. They can't get both of us. But I don't understand going to the exact same place and crashing into each other. That is unbelievable. And it is our winner for this week in What Is Wrong With You, the Ross Thieves. They will advance on to our monthly championship coming up at the end of this month. We've only got, 2 weeks left of this month? And that includes, we've got 2 more weeks of stories than our finals at the end of the month. And then 1 more month in December, and then we'll find our yearly champion in What Is Wrong With You. How about that? Right now, though, we're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back on the other side of this timeout, busy weekend ahead in the Big 12. We'll take a look at some of the biggest games on the schedule coming up here on 580 Sports Talk.
The ceremony at intro.
Before we get to our weekend look ahead to the Big 12 schedule, there's a bunch of drama going on with Twitter right now. Elon Musk's $44 billion investment that is apparently losing money hand over fist. There was a report earlier that bankruptcy is apparently already an option for Twitter, which in a way is like very funny that that's happening so quickly. Ralph Russo of the Associated Press, probably their main college football national writer, he put on Twitter, "This website has been good for my career while making my job a lot harder. It's something that I often really enjoy while absolutely making me less healthy both physically and mentally. My guess is it's not going anywhere, but if it did, I'd probably miss it and be thankful." Yeah, that's about accurate. If you spend all day on the internet like I know the two of us do, and in this industry, we spend a lot of time on Twitter because that's how breaking news comes out. And you find out the inactive lists for a football game, or you find out when baseball players have been traded or signed or whatever else it might end up being.
It has become, I mean, it's more than a diversion for us. It is a necessity. Like, it's something that we rely on for a lot of reasons. And am I 100% certain that app is going to fire up when I hit that blue bird tomorrow morning? No, I am not at this rate. I am 100% not confident in that. So, it is wild what is happening. It's a real emperor has no clothes moment for this Elon Musk character who proves that, once again, rich does not equal smart, and that maybe you shouldn't offer to buy something for $44 billion as a joke.
Especially if you don't have $44 billion on hand.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
might be
especially if it ain't worth $44 billion in the first damn place.
My tweets are. My tweets are worth that much. Maybe not other people's, though. All right, Big 12 weekend coming up. No show tomorrow, so no regular picks segment, but there is plenty to get to looking ahead to the Big 12 weekend. And number one, this is the game of the week in terms of importance, and I think it's going to be a very entertaining game on the playing field as well. K-State on the road against Baylor. I saw K-State fans were pretty worked up about this. And I'm not saying in a bad way. That sounds like it has a negative connotation. I'm just saying I saw on Twitter that some K-State fans were kind of doing a, come on, man, what the hell kind of situation. This will be the third game just this season that K-State has gone on the road to face a team that is doing a blackout or similar against them.
Is that right?
Yeah. Third time this year. Baylor is also quite literally giving away tickets. They had some billionaire booster buy up the remaining tickets to the game, and they're giving them away free.
So is Baylor wearing all black? Is that what's happening, or are they?
I believe it was I only saw it for students, but I would assume it's a team thing too. I don't remember Baylor black uniforms in the past.
I don't either, but it also wouldn't surprise me.
No, would not surprise me.
I'm a big proponent of, if your colors aren't black, don't wear black.
They posted a tweet where it's just a black and white picture of McLean Stadium, and then the black circle emoji, just be there, is their little bit for it. And then they again tweeted, bring the energy Saturday night with a new moon.
A big text from the Big O Tires text line from the 785 confirms they have worn black before, but at least the helmet has been green. That makes sense. Like, I can picture that.
Yeah.
I feel like that has happened. I don't know. Don't wear black if it's not team color.
No, I'm with you.
Like, I don't ever want to see K-State wear all black on the football, on the gridiron, for instance.
Oh, God. When Charlie Weiss is around, they wore dark gray. Ugh. Garbage. Charlie Weiss also had some weird thing where he didn't like blue and red, crimson and blue. He wanted things to be gray. I knew someone in college who had been a former team manager. He didn't like blue and red and wanted gray.
Was Charlie Weiss a dog? Was he colorblind?
Right? I don't know. But that's why during the early Montel Cozart years, KU wore those hideous gray uniforms. So there's a fun fact for you. This is a fascinating game for numerous reasons. Again, obviously the general importance of the game. K-State's got to win in all likelihood to stay in the Big 12 title picture race, because Baylor will then have a game up on them. Texas is still in the running, and Texas would have the tiebreaker over K-State anyway if they have the same record.
You would be in a really bad spot, because you would need both of those teams, Texas and Baylor, to lose twice in their final three games. And I mean, they play each other, so somebody's going to lose that game.
Yeah.
But no, it would really probably be the end, realistically, of the hopes of getting to Arlington if they can't go to Waco and win. And as Tim Fitzgerald pointed out when we talked to him yesterday on our weekly Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap up, Baylor, with K-State on the schedule, just happens to be entering the K-State game playing their best football of the year. which seems like an annual occurrence at this stage.
Yeah.
Like they are playing well. They just beat Oklahoma last week. Oklahoma had some success running the ball with Dylan Gabriel. K-State obviously has had some joy at times this year running their quarterback, so that's where they could derive an advantage. The biggest thing for Kansas State in this game is taking care of the football. I think if they do that, they're going to have a chance. I think they have, provided that they're healthy and ready to rock, which big question is this week at wide receiver. Are Malik Knowles and Cade Warner going to be ready to go? They didn't practice early this week. There is confidence, expressed confidence by the coaching staff that they should be good to go on Saturday. But, I mean, we saw what that final drive of Saturday's game against Texas without Malik Knowles on the field, when they had to move the ball through the air. Like, they could use big number 4 on the field. He's had a really good second half of this season so far, and they need him out there. And they need Cade Warner out there because he's been a playmaker for him too. But defensively, if they're loaded for bear, if Nate Matlack is out there, and Felix Anudike-Uzama is out there, Khalid Duke is out there, Julius Brents will be back, Daniel Green returned last week, I think they have enough talent on hand to slow down Baylor.
Agreed.
The question is going to be on that side, can you execute? Can you tackle better? K-State has responded really well to their losses this year.
Yep.
And I would expect that they will respond well on defense to what happened against Texas. Heck, they responded well in the second half against Texas. They tackled much better in the second half against Texas. If they play like that against Baylor, they can beat Baylor.
Squirrel Williams had a huge week last week, 192 yards on the ground against Oklahoma. K-State's defense is far better than Oklahoma's, but we also saw Bijan Robinson and, to a degree, Roshan Johnson run all over K-State for too much of the game last week. Not all of the game, but too much of the game last week. So, yeah, tackling is obviously going to be paramount in this game. I think in terms of taking care of the ball, I don't even know if I would put that in the concern category now, because I agree with you. You take care of the ball, you're going to have a chance in this game. K-State has taken care of the ball all year until this weekend, until this past weekend. That hasn't even been an issue.
No, and of course, the 2 turnovers happened at the most critical times. The late first half turnover that led to a touchdown that sent you into the locker room down 3 touchdowns, and the fumble at the very end of the game that kept you from coming back. Like, they were the most costly turnovers, so they feel like really outsized. And that's kind of been how it's gone for K-State when they have turned the ball, like Malik Knowles' fumble at the half-yard line against Iowa State. But, yeah, they've been really, really good at taking care of the football. Baylor thrives off of turnovers. They love to have the short field if they can force a turnover. Just got to take good care of the football this week.
Baylor's schedule is brutal for these final 3 weeks of the season. K-State at home, then they get to take on TCU in the rivalry. Then they get Texas on the road in the final game of the season. That is a really tough schedule the rest of the way. K-State, relatively speaking, has an easier schedule to end the year at West Virginia next week on the 19th, and then they get KU at home. That game's sold out already, by the way, which, again, not easy per se, but easier than what Baylor is going to face. It's almost unfortunate there's not one more week to the season, because if there was, and you had those kind of remaining schedules, K-State could, in theory, still be alive with a loss here. Unfortunately, losing the tiebreaker and being a game behind, it'd be hard to see being able to jump both Texas and Baylor.
Right.
Even with that easy schedule the rest of the way. It's a day earlier than normal. Do you have a pick for this game?
Man, like I said, K-State has responded really, really well to losses this year.
And to that point, as the backup for that, they beat Oklahoma on the road by 7, but they were in control for the entire game. And after losing to TCU, they had the most dominant win in program history over Oklahoma State.
This is a winnable game, and it is so important for Kansas State, not just from a Big 12 title game hunt perspective, but from if we want to accomplish any of the goals we set out and felt realistic to accomplish this year, we have to go win this game kind of standpoint. I think the way this game has to be won for Kansas State, we talked about taking care of the ball, we talked about tackling better, put the game in Blake Shapen's hands. If this ends up being a battle of which quarterback can make more plays, I like Kansas State.
Absolutely. Like, look at that K-State secondary. I would not want to throw against that if I was Blake Shapen.
That's going to be a hacked-off defense. Yeah. And a hacked-off Julius Brents, who had to miss that entire game against Texas if he got kicked out in the 4th offensive play of the game by Texas. No, I do. I think this is a winnable game for Kansas State, and I think the line reflects that. They are 2.5-point underdogs right now, but again, you would expect generally that line to be 3 to the home team, Baylor, just generally, and any movement towards the visitors suggests the visitors have a pretty good shot. So I do. I think I'll go out on a limb and I'll say that Kansas State wins on Saturday.
This is another one of those games I think is so tough. I'm trying not to hate on K-State. I'm going to go with Baylor. I think I think they might be playing the best football of anybody in the Big 12 right now. I'm going to go Baylor 28-27. Again, essentially toss-up territory. We've got a texter who says the targeting call still pisses me off from last week. Yeah, I get it. I would be frustrated
100%.
too. But that is a good point that might swing it the other way. Is that defense is going to be out for blood in this game against Baylor, no doubt about that. Losers out of the race, by the way. They're going to be behind a tiebreaker. They're going to be 6-4. They're going to be out of the race for the Big 12 title game. The other big game we should get to for the weekend, TCU, Texas. Is this finally the week that TCU goes down?
They are 7-point underdogs, which is wild about the number 4 team in the country going on the road against a team that has been in and out of the top 25 all year, and they're 7-point underdogs. But that's a testament to just how good Texas is when it's good.
And the advanced numbers love Texas.
Yes, all the S&P and the FEI and all of those advanced statistical metrics love Texas. And you saw why in the first half of the Kansas State game. Like, if it looks like that, there aren't but a handful of teams in the whole country that can beat Texas when it looks like that. Can it look like that against TCU? Well, if Quinn Ewers plays full 60, which is never a guarantee for opposing quarterbacks against TCU, happened again last week. Baron Morton got hurt. Starting quarterback didn't finish the game for Texas Tech. Happened again for TCU. They have been touched by an angel this year. No question about that. I would say TCU is good enough to keep it within a touchdown, but man, after what I saw from Texas last week, like if they've got 30 minutes like that, like they haven't played great second halves on the road, but they're at home. I'm leaning Texas in this one.
I'm going to go TCU, and this is kind of the swing game for me and how I view Texas for now and going forward. Like Texas in a do or die kind of game against a better team. What are they going to be able to do? Because I don't think, I think K-State is probably more talented than Texas, especially defensively in general, but I don't think the margin is really all that big. I think TCU is a really good team. They're number 4 in the rankings. They're undefeated on the season. They're well coached. They've got a quarterback who's playing out of his mind. If Texas can win this game, I think it is fair to say that that is a team for real. I'm not going to use the word that everyone wants to use. I'm not going to use that 4-letter word, but I do think they would be for real, and I do think they'd be a legit contender. And if they can win it once, I think they can win it a second time too and win the Big 12 this year. Yeah. I really do think that's possible.
And again, with all of the talent, all of the NFL talent on that team, like Bijan Robinson's going to play on Sundays. Jatavion Thomas, the tight end, is going to play on Sundays. DeMarvion Overshone, who's the leader of that front seven, is going to play on Sundays. A lot of those offensive linemen should play on Sundays. Quinn Ewers is a 5-star quarterback. Xavier Worthy's going to play on Sundays. All that talent they have, this is what it should be for Texas.
Real quick, because we only have 20 seconds here. In a word, KU get its 7th win of the year against Texas Tech. This is the best chance left for a win.
Yes, Texas Tech's offense is a mess. Yes.
Yep, I'm with you as well. KU wins. Close game. I think KU wins down in Lubbock. We've got 1 hour to go on 580 Sports Talk. Our headlines are coming up next. We've got our Thursday Night Football preview and parlays, and Mitch Holthus will join us next hour. It's all coming up after the news here on 580 Sports Talk. 580 Sports Talk on this Thursday afternoon. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you up until 6 o'clock today. Thank you so much for spending some of your afternoon with us. If you've missed any of the show up until this point, you know the drill. Head to our website, 580wibw.com. Hover over the podcasts tab. It is right in the middle of the page. And then click on 580 Sports Talk for the hour-by-hour podcast edition of the show. You can find our conversation with Rick Peterson from the first hour, talking all about the prep sports scene and the sectional round of the high school football playoffs. Crosstalk with Fulton. Today's What Is Wrong With You, and so much more. Here in this 5 o'clock hour, we've got plenty more to get to you today. We've got our headlines in just a moment. Thursday night football preview and our same game parlay picks. It's become a fun weekly tradition here on the show, so we're going to get to that coming up in just about 15 minutes. And Mitch Holthus is going to join us coming up in 25 minutes. 25 minutes from right now, Mitch Holthus is going to join us for our weekly conversation, brought to you, as always, by Hy-Vee and Azure Credit Union as we look ahead to the Jaguars and Chiefs coming up at noon on Sunday. You can always join in and be part of the show on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. And you can chime in as well on YouTube. That's right, we are live streaming the show video style on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is our channel. We're streaming live right now, waving to the camera as it is. Looking forward to seeing all of your comments on the YouTube comment section as well. We do have one texter as we get ready for our headlines here. Talked about it yesterday. Jacques Vaughn is the new head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. He is signed through the end of this year and next season. We've got a 785 texter who asks, what are the chances of Jacques Vaughn keeping the head coach job of the Brooklyn Nets for 2 years with all the drama queen players like Kyrie, Durant, and Simmons? It's a good question.
It is a good question.
Kevin Durant had nice things to say about Vaughn yesterday after their game. They actually won, so he's now 3-2 as their head coach. Good for him. But Durant said, hey, we're happy for him. You know, he's a good coach, good guy, all, you know, basic stuff. If there was ever a sport, though, where you would hear players not say the common nice thing, it's probably the NBA.
Right.
So KD didn't have to say that, and he did. So maybe that is a positive.
I think he's going to last the year for sure. And then the question is going to be, what direction do the Nets go? Do they divorce themselves from the drama? Do they, because they're not committed to Kyrie Irving beyond this season, I don't believe. And I don't know if they're committed to Durant much past this season either. Do they decide we want to build around Durant? Do we want to do a full scale tear down and just try and rebuild? If they do a rebuilding job, do they then think that Jacques Vaughn is a good coach to have around for a young or a mismatched kind of team with no real chance of winning? Or do they think, hey, we're going to reload for Bear and go try and win a championship with Kevin Durant as our main guy, and Ben Simmons, I guess he's around too. And then we need to hire a coach who's maybe got more experience to put it all together. So it is genuinely hard to say. And I'm not entirely sure that how Vaughn does as a coach is going to dictate whether or not he comes back, because it may come down to what the Nets decide they want to be beyond this, unless the Nets win the championship this year, in which case I'll probably keep him around.
I would think so. Durant is actually signed through 26. Okay. They gave him an extension this offseason.
He'll be around.
Kyrie, though, is a free agent after this year.
Yeah, he'll be around. Kyrie won't.
Yeah. Unless Durant forces his way out, because that's what players do now.
What stars do, right?
Yeah. So I mean, Vaughn struggled as a head coach for the Magic when there was no talent there. But with the bubble team for the Nets that actually had some fun young, I think D'Lo Brown was on that team, if I'm not mistaken. They had Karis LeVert, really, as he was kind of on the come up.
Did you say D'Lo Brown?
That's the wrestler. No, D'Angelo Russell. I was thinking he's called D'Lo.
You're looking at the real deal now.
Wow, D'Lo Brown, yeah. D'Lo Brown wouldn't have forgot to run on the court when he was supposed to sub in last night. I'll tell you that much.
To come in, moving his neck in all directions.
Did you see that highlight?
Yes.
D'Angelo Russell forgot to walk on the court. He was just standing
they blew the
waiting.
Sub horn, and he was just standing at the sub table chilling. They played a whole possession defensively, 4-on-5. They gave up an offensive rebound and a score before Russell realized, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be out there.
Unbelievable.
They're a mess.
I really did call him D'Lo Brown. That's pretty bad. We appreciate the text, though. You can text us on the Big O Tires text line or chime in the YouTube comments as well. We also have another question on YouTube. Dan, are you wearing a Buffalo Sabres hat today?
No. This is a Denver Nuggets hat. This is the pitchfork and mountain and basketball Nuggets alternate logo, matching my I got the Jamal Murray Nuggets Scherzi going on here as well. Nuggets won last night, beat the Pacers.
They did. It was a close game.
Yeah.
Was that overtime? No. There were a couple overtime games.
Yeah, they won by 3. I do, however, love that old Buffalo Sabres logo and have long thought about purchasing a Buffalo Sabres fitted cap, much like this one, the 47 brand style. So if I turn up with a Buffalo Sabres cap on someday, that's not me gaslighting you. That's just me finally pulling the trigger on something I've actually wanted for a while. I love that old Sabres logo. It's one of my all-time favorites.
It is a great logo. All right, let's get into the rest of our 580 Sports Talk headlines today. Brought to you, as always, by our good friends at Blue Dot of Kansas. You can go check them out online at bluedotkansas.com and find all the different products and services they have available to you. And by the way, making sure your heating is all in great shape at home, probably smart, because it's only going to be getting colder from here on out. Our first headline of the day, it is the biggest headline here in the state of Kansas. The Kansas Board of Education today, this is the writing on Twitter of Suzanne Perez, who covers this kind of news down in Wichita. The Kansas Board of Education has voted to recommend, that's a key word here, recommend, that all public schools in the state eliminate Native American mascots and imagery within 5 years. The vote of the 10-person board was 7-4, 1 against, and 2 abstaining. So of the 8 actual votes cast, 7 of them were, yes, we should recommend to remove and eliminate Native American imagery and mascots for the public schools in the state, which our Jake Laban told us earlier today would be 32 schools in the state of Kansas that have some sort of Native or indigenous imagery. Now,
that number is down in recent years.
Yes.
It bears mentioning that Shawnee Mission North has already changed their mascot. They were the Indians for a very long time.
Now the Buffaloes.
And they're now the Bison.
Excuse me.
And Wichita North, which is, they've used a word that frankly is a slur that was also the nickname of the Washington NFL football team and is no longer, and the mascot of that team. They dropped that mascot, I believe, before last year, and they are no longer using a mascot to identify their athletic programs. They are simply identifying as Wichita North. This is also similar, but not exactly the same, to legislature that has been passed in our neighbors to the west in Colorado, who I believe they actually did require that all schools with Native American mascots, logos, imagery from all K-12 schools to change theirs. I don't believe they were given as wide a time frame as 5 years, but there are other states that have had their boards of education. I believe that may have been a state legislation actually in Colorado, but this is the Board of Education. And he did point out recommend is not require. So we'll see what the reaction of this to this is in communities both large and small whose schools have, as you mentioned, there are 32 of them that have a Native American logo or mascot. Now, this is not a topic that everybody agrees upon, and not in the fun way that maybe people don't agree. Like, I don't think KU is going to win on Saturday or whatever it is. No, this is one that that inflames some passions, and I understand that to be true. But when you look at the broader trend of the Washington football team isn't what they used to be, and the Cleveland baseball team isn't what they used to be.
Nope.
And dozens of universities across the country have changed their mascots and logos over the years. Probably some that you may not have recognized or realized, like the Louisiana Monroe, the Warhawks. They used to have a Native American mascot. Stanford, for a very long time, was the Indians.
That's why they play for the Act.
Changed in the 70s. There is also historical context that schools in Kansas have not just changed without the recommendation of a school board, but have changed mascots. Like, you go back to the 70s, Wichita South. They were the Colonels with a blue and gray color scheme, and blue and red and gray color scheme and mascot, that in the 70s, they decided, this maybe shouldn't be our mascot. And they became the Titans, and they've been the Titans ever since. So there is precedent for all of this. And the general trend is that it is time to stop using Native American iconography, which does not belong to us as, non-Native American people, non-affiliated with a tribe or anything like that, using it as our mascot, as our dress up. Like, that's really where you get to it isn't necessary. Like, the Chiefs don't let you come in with the headdresses anymore to Arrowhead Stadium. The Braves gave away the game on the tomahawk chop when they said, yeah, we won't play it when Ryan Helsley, who is of Native American descent, is pitching in the game for the Cardinals. We just won't play it for him, acknowledging that it is, in fact, offensive to Native American people. So they gave away the game on that. They're going to keep playing that chop, but I don't know how much longer they're going to be doing that. And frankly, I don't know how much longer the Chiefs are going to be able to continue to do that themselves. We'll see. But this is a step that my personal opinion is a long time coming. And I think that there is an opportunity here for lots of schools and lots of communities to rebrand their high schools and do something fun and do something unique and do something that is inclusive to everybody and involves everybody in the community and moves forward in a neat way. Because frankly, Kansas is kind of lacking in the creative and unique high school mascot department.
Yes. You and I spent an afternoon before the show, maybe 2 weeks ago now, just going through the names of teams in Kansas and in our home states of Colorado and Illinois.
We need some more cool ones in Kansas, some more that are unique, some more that would make like a top list of high school mascots. Like, go be creative.
Too many Eagles, too many Wildcats. We need some different, too many Bulldogs. Like, we need some different. Now, I want to bring this up because you were right. This is a topic that gets a lot of people very emotional for a lot of reasons. And I say that not to say one is wrong, one is right. I've always personally had the opinion of, look, I am not personally offended, but that does not mean that other people are not. And maybe it is the right thing to just not have any name that would offend people. But I understand why people have emotional attachments to things, whether it is because it maybe is their people or maybe because it is, it's tradition, whatever it might end up
where
being.
they went to high school, it's where their parents did, where their kids did, that they've identified by their alma mater as that for so long. Like, understand, and I'm sympathetic to that. To a point.
And we've had a handful of texters already, and we appreciate the discussion, appreciate the open forum of ideas on the Big O Tires text line. One who said that as in a Native American person, that they see the names more as a tribute. We had someone else who said this isn't so black and white, and then, you end up with white people are then making, mostly white people, we live in a predominantly white state, it's true, are making decisions for Native people. Is that maybe not the right thing to do? And that, that's a different discussion. We have another texter who says, there are exceptions at some levels, like Florida State. They have retained the Seminole name and all of their image, the arrowhead, the flaming spear they throw before the game, which I think a lot of people would say, hey, that's like almost a caricature of what you think of as Native peoples, but they have an agreement. They've been able to keep that.
Yes, there's an outstanding relationship and like a standing relationship, I should say, with the Seminole tribe of Florida and Florida State for the use of that mask. I believe there is also one with Utah and the Utes.
Yes,
and I believe there is one with Illinois and the Illini.
To a degree, because they've kept the name.
They've kept the name.
Well, they mostly even just go by Illini now. They've kind of phased fighting out. But they no longer have the mascot, the Chief Illiniwek.
Chief Illiniwek was retired. Yeah. So, and like the Golden State Warriors are still out there, but they have moved away from some of that iconography, and there are lots of
kind of genericized their branding.
Yes, and there are lots of Warriors out there that I believe can do that. We had a discussion off the air of if that's possible for the Chiefs to do. I kind of think it is. I kind of think it's possible if the Kansas City football team moved away from some of the more explicit Native American iconography and imagery, could they still be the Kansas City Chiefs? I think that's possible. Absolutely, I do. But again, this is a recommendation and not a requirement. We'll see what the response is, because there have already been two communities, Shawnee Mission North and Wichita North, that have decided, you know what? It is time. It is time to move past this, because this was a thing that used to be something that was pretty common and now isn't. Like, we're not naming a lot of new schools. Like, not a lot of new schools or new franchises.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
That are being named this.
We've got a commenter on YouTube who says, what was the original intent for naming things after Native groups? And that's why, we appreciate the open forum of discussion because people view this very differently.
Right.
I will say this, and the fact that it is maybe even a little less so that it's a recommendation rather than a requirement. If it was a requirement, there'd be some pretty nasty fights in some communities around the state. I mean, just being honest, I think a lot of places would say, this is a tradition for us. This is what we've always been. It's important. We want to stay that way.
I have a colleague, somebody that I used to work with in Yuma, Colorado. Somebody that I followed them on social media. Yuma, Colorado for a very long time was the Indians. And that was something that the community identified with very strongly, usually shortened it, called their teams the tribe. That was something they were really, really strongly identified with. When Colorado passed their legislation, they had to drop that mascot, drop that name, and that was very passionate. And there were people that said, you know what, we'll miss being the Indians, but hey, it's a chance to do something new and do something fun and have a new tradition and a new nickname. And there were other people that wanted to hang on to what had always been. And in the end, Yuma chose to go the same path that Wichita North has for now, which is to not have a mascot for their teams, to just be Yuma. Just like Wichita North is just Wichita North. So there are a lot of ways that you can go with this. I hope that there are schools out there or in communities out there who take the opportunity to have conversations about this and maybe go in a direction that is more creative, more modern, more fun. Wouldn't the Hayes High Outlaws be cool? Like, Hayes is a big outlaw town, big Wild West town. Couldn't they do something fun with that instead of just being one of 20 odd schools in the state that are named the Indians?
Yeah, that's my one final note for this is whether teams change their names, they disagree with the recommendation, whatever, or if a team that doesn't even have native imagery wants to change their name, please do something cool. Please do something different and unique.
Absolutely.
Please. That is, we have too many Chargers and Wildcats and Bulldogs and whatever. Let's do something a little bit different, please. That is my lighthearted end to this headline. Let's make it a little new, a little fresh.
Yes. Let's have some fun with it if indeed that comes to pass. Next headline for us here on the Blue Dot of Kansas Headlines, we go to the participation report for Thursday for the Chiefs and the Jaguars as they prepare to play Sunday in Kansas City. For the second straight day, McCole Hardman for the Chiefs was a DNP with an abdomen injury. When you get to back-to-back DNPs, you start to wonder about a player's availability for Sunday. So starting to feel like there's a chance that McCole Hardman maybe can't go on Sunday at wide receiver for the Chiefs. Colin Saunders, who missed Wednesday's practice for personal reasons, returned to practice today. Everybody else who was on the list as a full participant Wednesday was again a full participant today, except for L'Jarius Sneed, who's dealing with a knee injury. He was limited today after being a full participant on Wednesday. That could just be that they're managing some pain. That could also mean that maybe something has gotten worse. That will bear monitoring as we go into Friday. Only 2 players on the Jaguars injury list. Both were limited participants today. Rayshawn Jenkins, their starting safety, coming out of the concussion protocol. He was a limited participant today. Evan Ingram, their starting tight end, dealing with a back injury, limited for a second straight day.
That would stink to not get Hardman out there. It feels like he is finally meshing well. It's not all on him, but it finally feels like there's more rhythm in what the Chiefs are trying to do with him and what he has been able to do. That would stink to suddenly lose him for any amount of time, even against a team like Jacksonville, who you should be able to beat without McCole Hardman of all pieces. But by the same token, against a bad secondary, you'd think, hey, we can do even more creative stuff with him and see if it can work. So that would stink. That's the one thing about that injury report that bums me out a little bit, which is weird because I've been just this side of McCole Hardman hater for years now, but it's working right now. It would suck to not have him out there. Quick NFL news and notes as we continue on our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot. 2 quick personnel things. One, Raiders linebacker Blake Martinez, who spent several years with the Packers, a couple years with the Giants, and so far this season with the Las Vegas Raiders, retired from football today. The 28-year-old linebacker, who is a product of Stanford, missed practice today for personal reasons. Later in the afternoon, the Raiders tweeted, "Good luck on your new journey." He got injured this past week. He had actually played reasonably well He had 11 tackles and played almost every snap in the Raiders' loss to the Jaguars this past week.
91% of the defensive snaps. 1 week playing for Josh McDaniels, he's like, man, I can't do this football thing anymore.
He has dealt with a handful of injuries in recent years, and this sounds crazy. I wonder if he is getting out of the game to focus on his biggest non-playing passion, which is trading valuable trading cards. And that sounds insane. Like, you're giving up a football career to do this. There was a story just last week. You and I talked about this in the office the other day. He sold a Pokemon card. This is not a joke. For more than half of his annual base salary with the Raiders. The card sold for $672,000 and didn't give him a concussion and a broken arm. He makes $1.04 million base salary this year. And all he had to do was get the card like authenticated and then sell it to a buyer.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot more fun than sacrificing your body for Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, yeah, I mean, best of luck to Blake Martinez, again, former Packer Giant and now Raider as well as he retires. Also, one other note ahead of Thursday Night Football tonight, and we'll get to our preview here in just a second. Jake Matthews, longtime offensive lineman for the Falcons, been a very solid player for many years now. He and his wife were expecting to have their first child today. Well, the game is in Charlotte. His wife is in Atlanta, where he's played for 8 years. He left Charlotte first thing this morning with team owner Arthur Blank, flew back to Atlanta, was in the delivery room for his son being born, and then immediately left again on Arthur Blank's plane back to Charlotte and is going to start tonight at left tackle for the Falcons.
Football guy.
His wife, Maggie, tweeted, "Baby boy is safely delivered and Jake Matthews is safely delivered to the plane to Charlotte. Rise up, Atlanta Falcons. I did my best, Falcons fans."
Oh, my gosh.
That the pressure was not on you, Mr. Matthews. I promise. Not on you. Any other headlines for you?
Josh Allen did not practice. Status up in the air for Sunday. Ryan Tannehill returned to full practice. Looks like he'll play against the Broncos.
I think Chiefs fans might be looking at that Josh Allen injury more than any of their own injuries for this week.
That's a fact.
Well, that is it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot. Let's take a quick break. Our Thursday Night Football preview and parlays are next here on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you on 580 Sports Talk, 5:31 on this Thursday afternoon. Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Chiefs, will join us coming up in just a moment. Thursday night football tonight, though, we've got the Falcons visiting the Panthers. Jake Matthews will be there for the Falcons tonight. Atlanta on the road, favored by 2.5. Road teams have actually in the last few years been pretty darn good against the spread on Thursday night football. I think that's going to continue tonight. I think as much as I love XFL legend PJ Walker, I kind of feel like the magic has run out a little bit. The Falcons, I don't think are good, but they play a fun brand of football, at least offensively. I think they're playing well enough that they should get the job done tonight. So I've got the Falcons. In fact, I've got the Falcons covering the spread in my same-game parlay pick tonight that I am playing at FanDuel. So if you want to play our same-game parlays, you can do so because Dan and I are both betting our picks tonight. I've got the Falcons minus 2.5, so to win by at least 3. Cordarrelle Patterson, anytime touchdown, that's plus 105, so value on that. And Terrace Marshall, who's been very hot, over 40 yards each of the last 3 weeks for the Panthers. I'm going to say he goes over 40-plus yards tonight, too. That's even money. So those 3 picks combined, that's a same-game parlay plus $4.91, $10. If it wins, that'll make you $49.10.
I am also laying the 2.5 points with the Falcons, but I am betting on a rough night for passers. It is going to be windy and wet in Charlotte tonight. And for that reason, I am betting the under on Marcus Mariota, 157.5 passing yards, and the under for PJ Walker, 165.5 passing yards. It is going to be a slog tonight. Windy and wet, and neither of those quarterbacks is very good, and the Falcons don't even want to throw it anyway. I think the Falcons win it, and both quarterbacks go under on their passing yards total. Mine is plus 492. So if you would like to bet $10 and win 20 more cents, or 10 more cents, I suppose, then rock with my parlay. But you can bet those all again with FanDuel. It doesn't matter if you're new to FanDuel or already have an account. You get free bets back if your Thursday night same-game parlay doesn't hit. It's a no-sweat same-game parlay. You can build your own or choose from one of the popular SGPs pre-built for you in FanDuel's top-rated sportsbook app. However you want to play, you can bet the NFL Thursday night with a no-sweat same-game parlay. Just sign up with my promo code Lucero if you don't already have an account. If you already have it, you're all set. Just sign in to see what you've got. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 and present in Kansas. 3 or more legs. Minimum $1 bet required. Refund issues not withdrawable free bets. Expire 7 days after receipt. Max free bet $5. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
Mitch Holthus joins us next here on 580 Sports Talk. Obviously, the big win over the Titans. A look ahead to the matchup with the Jaguars as Mitch now joins us on the phone. Mitch, are you excited to have the rare noon kickoff coming up on Sunday? The Chiefs are fairly new bedfellows with these noon kickoffs this season.
I'm ecstatic about it, as is most of the Chiefs' kingdom. Now, you take the whatever with the good in the fact that America cannot get enough of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, not only America, but the world. So if NBC could have the Chiefs every Sunday night game, they would. But to have a Sunday noon game is actually a treat. Plus, it's the Salute to Service game, which is honestly my favorite game of the year. And this year, Brandon, we are, every year since 2016, we've had a special patch. There's a guy named Cale Kirby who works in our equipment group, works for Alan Wright, and he's assistant equipment manager, but he's the one that has designed these Salute to Service patches. And this year's very unique and impactful. It's the 50th anniversary of Operation Linebacker 1 and 2. That was the bombing mission over North Vietnam where Derek Thomas, his father, Captain Robert Thomas, perished as a co-pilot on a B-52 Stratofortress that was took 2 surface-to-air missiles. And actually, Captain Thomas kept the B-52 airloft enough for the crew to be able to escape. And then he lost his life. But that patch will be worn by our players this week, and you'll see the Salute to Service patches come out. So this week, noon kickoff, yeah, I'm excited, but I'm mostly excited about the Salute to Service and the patch and the way that this Chiefs franchise, as much as any in the NFL, reveres the women and men who have served, are serving, and will serve.
Well, that is absolutely tremendous. I can't wait to see those in action coming up on Sunday. And of course, since tomorrow is Veterans Day, the biggest of shout outs to all of our men and women who have served our great country overseas and at home over many years.
And Brendan, honestly, I put the patch on my Twitter page. You can go to stat Mitch Holthus easy, but you'll find it on there because I slapped it on there right after the win over Tennessee. So I didn't want to interrupt you, but I wanted to put that out there. If people wanted to see the patch before, everybody in the public sees it.
No, that is awesome. And yes, it is right on Mitch's Twitter page. I pulled it up right in front of me right now. The patch looks awesome, Mitch. That is going to look so cool on the uniforms coming up on Sunday. Before we get to the matchup on Sunday against the Jaguars, I do want to at least momentarily look back on the game against Tennessee from this past Sunday night on Sunday Night Football. NBC got their wish this past weekend. What impressed you the most about that Chiefs victory? We talked about it a bunch on Monday that the defense stepped up huge in the second half. Patrick Mahomes just had an unbelievable game like he so often does. What stood out the most to you in a positive sense in Sunday night's win?
That the Chiefs used a NASCAR car to win a monster truck rally. That's what it felt like. Because anytime you play Tennessee, they're just going to mud it up. I mean, it's the scene on Step Brothers where they're going to the end of the block and all the kids are waiting for them, right, to bully them. And that's just the way Tennessee is. But for the Chiefs to win the game in really unconventional fashion, 68 passes, 101 plays run, but to just slug it out with those guys and pull it out is a bigger deal than you think. I mentioned last week the most peculiar stat of that series is that going into the game, Coach Reed was 1-8 against those guys. Well, the main reason is that's what the Titans do to you. They just, they put motor oil on the wedding cake and try to mess everything up. Well, the Chiefs were able to survive it and slug it out with them and win. It was a big deal. The fact that and Pat Mahomes, we had Patrick on our Chiefs Rewind show on 65 TPT and on Facebook Live after the game, and I basically asked him the same question, and his answer was, "It proves that we can win in so many different ways." That win does a lot to propel this team forward than maybe people realize.
On the defensive side of the ball this past game, our preview for the game last week, we talked so much about how, hey, you can allow Derrick Henry to get some rushing yards, but as long as you don't give up the huge gains over and over like he had gotten the previous few weeks, you're going to be just fine. Well, he rushes the ball 17 times for 115 yards, Mitch, but outside of 2 rushes, he was averaging just over 2 yards a carry. Overall, I would say that's a pretty big statement by the Chiefs' run defense.
Well, especially in the second half, where they had 23 plays for 38 total yards and 1 first down. Well, that includes all those Derrick Henry runs. The Chiefs' run fits and discipline was much better. They were almost too excited and got too anxious to stop him early in the game, which I also mentioned last week with you guys is a problem. You've got to stay disciplined, aggressive, discipline. And you got to do it again this week, because I'm telling you, the next new thing in the NFL at running back is playing for the Jaguars and Travis Etienne. But you're right. The Chiefs were able to improve much better, but it wasn't super tricky. Hey, what did you do scheme-wise? It was just being more disciplined, as simple as that.
Our guest is Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs. He joins us every week at this time here on 580 Sports Talk, thanks to our friends at Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. Patrick Mahomes certainly put the offense on his back on Sunday night. He had the most passing attempts in his career and also led the Chiefs in rushing, including 3 dramatic runs on the game-tying drive, the 20-yarder on 3rd and 17, the touchdown run, and then the run for the game-tying 2-point conversion. That being said, outside of Mahomes' legs, it was a rough night for the running game. What needs to get better for the Chiefs to be able to establish a little bit more of that running threat? And are Mahomes' legs perhaps a key to that?
I don't think so. You don't want it to be. It's just there if necessary. It's like the fire extinguisher in your house or the glass case axe, like use in case of emergency. I don't think you want to. It's there if you need it, but you don't want to use it. So let's just take Mahomes as running as a fire extinguisher. Now, the running game is, to me, last week was opponent specific. Tennessee is incredibly hard to run the ball on. You might be Army or Smith Center, you're going to have a hard time running on them just because it's what they do. It's their kind of thuggery up front. But the Chiefs also had a 12-yard run early in that game. I talked to Eric Bieniemy about it today in just a casual conversation. I go, that 12-yard run, could that have changed enough? He said, yeah, big time. Like you couldn't get into a rhythm running and a penalty called it back. So that became, instead of a 12-yard run, a minus 22-yard net effect. So Jacksonville is better than people think. I mean, I've been so impressed in looking at them this week in prepping for them. But one of the things that they have an issue with is sometimes it's going back to what I said the Chiefs had in the first half against Tennessee. You get over-aggressive. You overrun a play. You're going too fast. And Jacksonville has missed 99 tackles this year. That's number 1 in the National Football League. Now, they're capable. They got dudes, but sometimes their youth works against them. So if we're having the same discussion about the run game a week from now, I think it'll be more pertinent than just discussing it now, because I think it was opponent-specific against Tennessee.
What is your impression halfway through this season on how much Juju Smith-Schuster has meant to this Chiefs offense and how he's seemed to build a rapport with Mahomes so far this season?
Phenomenal question, because I think now your question and this issue rises into near the top of the story of the 2022 season. I wasn't sure what we were getting in Juju Smith-Schuster. You know, the 2018 historic year, 5 NFL records, but then it became like, is he crazy? TikTok guy? What's he about? And he was injured he was rehabbing from an injury this spring and summer, but he was around some. I'm telling you, he's fabulous. He has been fabulous on and off the field for this team. His personality is one that fits right in with this team. And I'm thinking, if he could have started his career here in 2018, oh gosh, we'd be just talking about Juju Smith-Schuster in a whole different way. He's flourishing here, but it's also his personality, the energy that he brings coming to work, the effect that he has had on the locker room and beyond the locker room has been profound. And if this season continues to point forward and he puts another couple big numbers on the board and starts to climb up into that top 12, top 10 range of receiving, then the national pundits will jump in. But I'm telling you, within the Chiefs Kingdom right now, your question is one of the biggest you've asked all year, because it's becoming one of the biggest stories.
Something that we talked about, Mitch, back in training camp was the youth in the secondary and how excited the Chiefs were about a couple of late-round draft pick rookies that they felt really confident could develop into players with them in Josh Williams and Jalen Watson. Well, fast forward to last week, and yes, it was a passing game that was limited for the Titans with Malik Willis making his second career start, but it looked to be some pretty impressive play by this new look Chiefs cornerback group where Trent McDuffie is now back from his injury that he suffered in week 1. And Josh Williams and Jalen Watson are out there with L'Jarius Sneed. And that's the 4-corner nucleus right now for the Chiefs at that position. How promising does that group look to you? And how much have they grown to the point where in making the Rashad Fenton trade, the Chiefs showed a great deal of faith and belief in these young cornerbacks moving forward?
I'm going to throw Brian Cook in there because the Chiefs are going to play more 3 safety look they did last week against Tennessee. So your corner discussion is also a parenthetical discussion about Brian Cook when they go to 3 safeties. To me, when you think about the Chiefs and their upside of the ceiling, they have one of the highest ceilings in the National Football League right now, either the AFC or the NFC. And part of that discussion about ceiling is in the cornerback position. Now, McDuffie was put out there on an island one-on-one, but he's defending tight ends. Tennessee's wide receiver core has got to be 32nd in the league. Nothing against those guys, but, you're going to get more of a test this week. Not the Jacksonville number 1 in the league, but they've got some different dudes. Christian Kirk's pretty good, and they're going to take some shots on the boundary, and that might be Trent McDuffie. That defending guys like that are a lot different than Austin Hooper running a go route as an ex-receiver, which is just what Tennessee is right now. It's really kind of bizarre. But still, he made plays out there, and Watson's made plays, and Williams has made plays. And so, yeah, it's really part of the upside and excitement about where this team can go in the next 90 to 120 days.
Just a few more questions for Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, joining us here on 580 Sports Talk, brought to you as always by our good friends at Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. You mentioned his name earlier on in our conversation, Mitch, but Travis Etienne, he has been so good for Jacksonville. Was injured all of last season, but he's back with his pal from college, Trevor Lawrence, and he really does look like the real deal. So what is it going to take for the Chiefs defense to slow down this young running back sensation for Jacksonville?
Well, it goes back to 3 paragraphs ago, in that, as you must say, discipline. But Etienne is more explosive than Derrick Henry in a different way. Faster, quicker, although he's got great size. Etienne, if you just look at what he's been able to do, here's a couple of your stats of the Knights and Nuggets. He only became the starter, remember, well into the season when they traded James Robinson to the Jets. But in his first 4 starts, he set a Jacksonville record. That includes Maurice Jones-Drew. His 6 20-plus runs. And keep in mind, he's not been the RB1 all season. In fact, just kind of morphed into the role, but 6 20-plus runs. Number 1 in the league is Nick Chubb. Number 2 is Derrick Henry. And guess who number 3 is? Travis Etienne. This is a problem for the Chiefs in corralling him. Because if you do not stay disciplined in your run fit, then it's a major issue. Then all of a sudden he's the Clemson Tiger running for 7.2 yards per game. Him coming back, being healthy. Remember, he missed all of last year with a Liz Frank foot injury. Him coming back, and I think Doug Peterson, our old offensive coordinator, good friend, great dude, who eased him into that role this year, and then all of a sudden, whammo, he exploded. Let me say this. Tennessee's got to be careful here. On the Defending the Kingdom podcast, I think we're posted it today. People can listen to that driving home the night after your show or whatever they want to do. But the point is, I called it a slip and surge. Tennessee has to be careful because that division, somebody's going to win that division at probably 9-8, maybe 8-9. But it may be the Jaguars. If not, they are poised in 2023 to be the talk of that division, because they also get Calvin Ridley in the offseason. But if Travis Etienne stays healthy, look out for the Jaguars, because they've got enough talent, and now they've got an eye-popping dude that can make plays when you have it perfectly defended, and it does not matter.
And to the point you made about Doug Peterson and obviously a good relationship in Kansas City and with Andy Reid, but it's pretty amazing that Jacksonville has, all of their losses this year have been by just 1 score. They've been close in the games they've lost. They've got a couple blowout wins. We were talking about that earlier on the show, Mitch. Doug Peterson, I think, I said this last year when Meyer got fired, that best option possible would be for Jacksonville to go get Doug Peterson. He's an adult in the room. He can help their quarterback situation with the young Trevor Lawrence. I know they're just 3-6, but the fact they've played so many close games and they've looked this much better than last season. He's truly done a tremendous job down there.
Well, and we didn't talk about their defense, where you've got guys, Trayvon Walker, Devin Lloyd. Here's another stat for you. They're 3-6 record, and you mentioned 1-6 in one-score games. But there's something that coincides with their 3 wins. The one thing that they have in all 3 of their wins is a Devin Lloyd takeaway. Devin Lloyd reminds me of a Devin White in his prime with Tampa Bay. But Doug and Coach, I talked to Coach about this today. I said, this is another deal. I said, Coach, this reminds me of you in 2013. Because when Coach Reed came here, the Chiefs were a mess. I said phytoplankton. They were, algae on the dishes of the Titanic. Well, Doug walked into the same mess. Here's Doug Peterson, wins a Super Bowl and win Philadelphia. Good dude, solid. He's learned at the feet right of Andy Reid. But now he takes over a mess in Jacksonville, but with potential, much like Coach Reid. So when you infuse, and I asked Coach, I said, what's the challenge here basically playing the 2013 Chiefs? And he said, you know what? They let it fly. This is the year they'll let it fly. There's no expectations, and now they've got enough talent to be ornery. And so, heck, let her rip. That's the Chiefs of 2013. We started 9-0 after being 2-14, make the playoffs, lose the playoff game to the Colts. But still, that whole year was just this magic carpet ride where nobody expected the Chiefs to do anything, and all of a sudden they became a great story. Your next great story in the AFC in the second half of the season could very well be the Jacksonville Jaguars. So write it down or put a note on your phone or whatever, because in a month from now, if we're talking about those guys, they could be a real part of the discussion in the AFC South. Remember, slip and surge. That could happen in that division.
Mitch Holthus is the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs. He joins us every Thursday during the Chiefs season, brought to you by both Hy-Vee and Azure Credit Union. Mitch, as always, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much, and we are looking forward to hearing from you coming up at noon on Sunday.
I was looking out for you and Dan this week. I spoke to the Alpha Media Group Regional Conference, 44 market managers from the whole region, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or not from the whole country. And I put in a word for both you guys for a very significant raise.
Love that.
Yeah, very much appreciate that, Mitch.
And here's what they did. I go, expect something. They said, expect something. A Jelly of the Month Club subscription.
Love that.
Hey, we'll take it no matter what. Mitch, we appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Don't buy the swimming pool. Just head to Hy-Vee.
That is the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, Mitch Holthus, joining us here on 580 Sports Talk, the absolute best. We're about out of time, so let's get to a real quick final word.
One more thing. In conclusion, you better wrap it up.
And it's our last one of the week since we're off tomorrow, so Dan, take it away.
I think the Chiefs are going to beat the Jaguars on Sunday, but I don't think they're going to cover that 9.5. I think Jaguars are good enough to keep it close. I'm thinking something like maybe 34-27.
Final word for me, Chiefs on Sunday, K-State Baylor toss-up on Saturday. I know that's a cop-out, and it's Rock Chalk Saturday and tonight for the Jayhawks as well. We are off tomorrow due to K-State basketball. So to all of you who have served our country, thank you so much. Happy Veterans Day to you. We'll be back on Monday with a full show recapping everything from the weekend. So until then, for Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. This is 580 Sports Talk.